Using a small camera, he took over 30 photos of areas within the multi-level complex. He removed a security videotape from the control center which showed various security camera views of hallways, labs, aliens, and U.S. government personnel. He also collected documents to take with him. Then, by shutting off the alarm and camera system in one of the over 100 exits to the surface, he left the facility with the photos, video, and documents. These originals were hidden after 5 sets of copies were made. Note, these were placed in the hands of 5 individuals, who were told that if they failed to hear from Costello for 3 consecutive 6-month periods, normally he would visit each of them every 6 months, then they could release the information or do whatever they wanted with it. No one except Costello and the recipients themselves know who these people are. However, with rumors of Costello's death or disappearance in Costa Rica in recent years, the recipients can release the information if they choose to do so, although they may decide to wait until the subject reaches critical mass among the public, and then come forward with little fear of repercussions. Brenton Thomas was ready to go into hiding. But, when he went to pick up his wife and young son, he found a van and government agents waiting. He had been betrayed by Kay Lomas, a fellow worker who was instrumental in the kidnapping of his wife and child. The agents wondered what Thomas had taken from the facility for which he would get his wife and son back. It became apparent to him that his wife and son would be used in biological experiments and were not going to be returned unharmed. That was a little over 10 years ago. How did Thomas get involved in all this covert intrigue? Thomas is now about 50 years old at the time that the article was written in 1991, Brenton. When he was in his mid-20s, he received top-secret training in photography at an underground facility in West Virginia. For 7 years, he worked for the Rand Corporation in Santa Monica, California. When in 1977 he was transferred to the Dulce facility, note, in a similar manner as scientist Robert Lazar, who worked for Los Alamos Labs, was transferred to Area 51 in Nevada, which is an alternate base similar to Dulce. Lazar claims that he replaced a scientist who had died during an altercation with aliens in the tunnels below the Nevada military complex. The point I'm trying to make is that both Rand Labs and Los Alamos Labs apparently have the answers to what is really going on under Dulce in Area 51, if anyone does. Brenton, he bought a home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and worked Monday through Friday with weekends off. All Dulce-based personnel commute via a deep underground tube shuttle system. At the time, one of us, Tal, was working security in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and was privately investigating UFO sightings, animal mutilations, Masonic and Wicca groups in the area. Thomas had a mutual friend who came to Santa Fe in 1979 to visit both of us. This individual would later view the photos, videotape and documents taken from the Dulce base. Drawings were made from what was seen and circulated later in the UFO research community as the Dulce papers. Thomas alleges that there were over 18,000 of the short grays at the Dulce facility. He has also seen tall reptilian humanoids. One of us, Tal, had come face to face with a 6-foot-tall reptoid which had materialized in the house. The reptoid showed interest in research maps of New Mexico and Colorado which were on my wall. The maps were full of colored pushpins and markers to indicate sites of animal mutilations, caverns, the locations of high UFO activity, repeated flight paths, abduction sites, ancient ruins, and suspected alien underground bases. The security level goes up as one descends to the lower levels. Thomas had an Ultra 7 clearance. He knew of 7 sub-levels, but there may have been more. Most of the aliens are on levels 5, 6, and 7. Alien housing is on level 5. The only sign in English was one over a tube shuttle station hallway which read to Los Alamos. Connections go from Dulce to Page, Arizona facility, then to an underground base below Area 51 in Nevada. Tube shuttles go to and from Dulce to facilities below Taos, New Mexico, Dulce, New Mexico, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Creed, Colorado, Sandia, then on to Carlsbad, New Mexico. There is a vast network of tube shuttle connections under the United States which extends into a global system of tunnels and sub-cities. At the Dulce base, most signs on doors and hallways are in the alien symbol language and a universal symbol system understood by humans and aliens. Thomas stated that after the second level, everyone is weighed, in the nude, then given a uniform. Visitors are given off-white uniforms. The weight of the person is put on a computer ID card each day. Any change in weight is noted. Any change in over 3 pounds requires a physical exam and X-ray. The uniforms are jumpsuits with a zipper. In front of all sensitive areas are scales built into the floor by doorways and the door control panels. And individual places his computer ID card into the door slot, then presses a numerical code and buttons. The person's card must match with the weight and code or the door will not open. Any discrepancy in weight will summon security. No one is allowed to carry anything into sensitive areas. All supplies are put on a conveyor built and X-rayed. The same method is used in leaving sensitive areas. All elevators are controlled magnetically, but there are no elevator cables. The magnetic system is inside the walls of the elevator shaft. There are no normal electrical controls. Everything is controlled by advanced magnetics, including lighting. There are no regular light bulbs. The tunnels are illuminated by phosphorus units with broad, structureless emission bands. Some deep tunnels use a form of phosphorus pentoxide to temporarily illuminate certain areas. The aliens won't go near these zones for reasons unknown. Note, this suggests that these deeper tunnels may have originally been constructed in more ancient or prehistoric times by beings other than the current reptiloid Draco residents of the deeper levels of the Dulce base itself. Branton. The studies on level 4 include human aura research, as well as all aspects of telepathy, hypnosis, and dreams. Thomas says that they know how to separate the bioplasmic body from the physical body and place an alien entity force matrix within a human body after removing the soul life force matrix of the human. Note, or in more simple terms, kill the human being and turn it into a vessel to be used by another entity, whether alien or paraphysical, in order to allow that entity to work and operate in the physical realm. This appears to be a complex high-tech version of the old zombie traditions, if in fact such horrific applications of occult technology are taking place within this installation. Incidentally, the interlinking underground systems converging below Dulce, New Mexico, have been described only in part within this and other related accounts. Those sectors of the underground that are forbidden to most humans and under reptiloid control, are of course those areas that we know the least about. Branton. Level 6 is privately called Nightmare Hall. It holds the genetic labs. Here are experiments done on fish, seals, birds, and mice that are vastly altered from their original forms. There are multi-armed and multi-legged humans in several cages and vats of humanoid bat-like creatures, deceased Mothman, or those creatures that John Keel refers to in his book The Mothman Prophecies. Branton, up to 7 feet tall. The aliens have taught the humans a lot about genetics, things both useful and dangerous. Tall then describes something which might seem unbelievable if it weren't for the fact that dozens of other sources seem to have confirmed it. This discovery was reportedly one of the real reasons for the incitation of the Dulce Wars. Level number 7 is the worst. Row after row of 1,000s of humans and human mixture remains in cold storage. Here too are embryos of humanoids in various stages of development. Also, many human children's remains in storage vats. Who were these people? My sources of information include people who worked in the labs, abductees taken to the base, people who assisted in the construction, intelligence personnel, NSA, CIA, etc., and UFO and Earth researchers. This information is meant for those who are seriously interested in the Dulce base. For your own protection, be advised to use caution while investigating this complex. The Greys, the reptoids, the winged Draco species are highly analytical and technologically oriented. They have had ancient conflicts with the humans and may be staging here for a future conflict. Principal government organizations involved with mapping human genetics, the so-called genome projects, are within the Department of Energy, the National Institute of Health, the National Science Foundation, the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and, of course, the Dulce Underground Labs run by the DOE. Note, the Department of Energy, which also runs the Nevada test site. Branton. Is the alien and human biotech being used to nurture and serve us, or is it being used to control and dominate the United States? Why have UFO abductees been used in genetic experiments? It was when Thomas encountered humans in cages on level 7 of the Dulce facility that things finally reached a climax for him. He says, I frequently encountered humans in cages, usually dazed or drugged, but sometimes they cried and begged for help. We were told they were hopelessly insane, and involved in high-risk drug tests to cure insanity. We were told never to speak to them at all. At the beginning we believed the story. Finally in 1978 a small group of workers discovered the truth. That began the Dulce Wars. We may find it hard and unpalatable to digest or even believe Thomas' story, and why should we even give it a hearing at all? Probably for no other reason than the fact that many others are coming out and telling bizarre stories, and the fact that there may be a terrible truth hidden behind the continuing phenomena of UFO sightings, abductions, and animal mutilations. Our government intelligence agencies have had an ongoing watchful eye on all UFO activities for many decades now. This bizarre phenomena must have a bizarre explanation. We may be only one outpost in a vast interstellar drama. Recently, researcher John Anderson went to Dulce, New Mexico to see if there is anything to the reported UFO activity. He says that he arrived in town coincidentally to see a caravan of cars and a McDonnell Douglas mini-lab in a van going up a rural road near the town. He followed them to a fenced-in compound where he waited to see further developments. Suddenly, 6 UFOs descended rapidly over the compound, hovered long enough for him to snap one picture, then shot up and out of sight. When later stopping in a store to tell the owner of the UFO photo he had taken, the store owner listened and revealed how he had been a victim cattle rancher of cattle mutes. Their conversation was interrupted by a phone call, after which the store owner told John to leave at once, then closed the store after John went to his car. John then saw a mysterious van drive up to the store and a man got out and went in. John decided to leave Dulce at that moment, but was followed by 2 men in a car as he left town. Even more recently, a research team has gone up to Archuleta Mesa to take soundings under the ground, and preliminary and tentative computer analysis of these soundings seem to indicate deep cavities under the mesa. One source has stated that according to the data received, these cavities extended to a depth of over 4,000 feet. Branton. Perhaps, someday, we will discover the deep dark secret of Dulce. Whatever the future beings, it won't be dull. Chapter 11. A Dulce-based security officer speaks out. The following is a list of questions that were directed to former Dulce-based security officer Thomas Edwin Costello approximately a year before his death or disappearance. They are followed by his responses. Question: when exactly was the upper human occupied level of the Archuleta installation constructed? Answer: I heard Dulce was started in 1937-38 by the Army engineers, enlarged over the years. Most recent work was completed 1965-66 to connect tunnels to the Page, Arizona base, site at one of the older underground facilities. The Four Corners base is called Perica. Most of the Native Americans, the Indians, living in that area are aware of that base, and could tell us about the underground life forms that frequently are spotted near those communities, Bigfoot, etc. Note: the references to the Dulce base here deal mainly with the upper levels, not the extreme lower levels, which include vast natural caverns and, some believe, very ancient tunnel systems as well. This would include the tunnels illuminated by phosphorus pentoxide, which the alien greys avoid, and the origin of which is unknown. In fact, sources have informed us that some of the underground NORAD facilities of Colorado were constructed within already existing cavern systems, suggesting that Ray Palmer and Richard Shaver were correct when as early as the mid-1940s they wrote about the government's search for ancient underground cave and tunnel systems to be converted for their own use. Branton Q. By what means was the upper installations constructed? Are you familiar with the alleged developments made by the Rand Corporation of a highly efficient borer mole machine capable of melting rock using nuclear-powered wolfram graphite-tipped drill cones? Answer: according to several senior maintenance workers, part of it was blasted by nuclear devices in the 60s. There are sections, like the shuttle tunnels, that were formed by an advanced tunneling machine that leaves the tunnel walls smooth. The finished walls in those tubes resemble polished black glass. Q. By whom was the Dulce installation originally constructed? Answer: nature started the caverns. The Draco reptilian humanoids used the caverns and tunnels for centuries. Later, through Rand Corporation plans, it was enlarged repeatedly. The original caverns included ice caves and sulfur springs that the aliens found perfect for their needs. The Dulce caverns rival Carlsbad caverns in size. Note: Carlsbad caverns and especially the adjacent Lake Aguila caves are officially among the largest and deepest in the world, with several leads that remain to be explored by professional speleonautes. Branton Q. What exactly are the cattle and human organs such as blood, anal tissue, eyes, reproductive organs, tongues, etc. used for, that is the organs obtained via cattle and human mutilations? Answer: read the so-called Dulce papers for more information. Q. Are the various electromagnetically controlled air or spacecraft that have been seen leaving from and arriving at Mount Archuleta, Manned by humans, the alien entities, or both? Answer: Arcoleta Mesa is a minor area. The craft leave and are stored in 5 areas. One is at Sea of Dulce, one near Durango Company, one at Taos, NM, and the main fleet is stored at Los Alamos, Hunter. Note: I believe Thomas Costello is referring to the Joint Operational Fleet. From combined sources, however, it appears as if Dulce is absolutely surrounded on all sides by alien bases, and that Arcoleta Peak, although apparently the central nexus of the entire underground network, is nevertheless just one part of an overall complex that some claim is nearly the size of Manhattan. One source has indicated that there are chambers a few hundred feet below the very town of Dulce itself that are part of Level 1 of the facility. This close proximity may explain why it has usually been described as the Dulce base. Apparently, even with his high security clearance, Thomas Costello was only familiar with one part of the overall mega-complex which underlies the area. Whatever amount of activity is taking place there, different sources seem to indicate that the town of Dulce nevertheless lies over a major crossroads, convergence or intersection area of alien activity, even though the core of alien activity has been extended to Los Alamos. Los Alamos and the mountainous regions east and southeast of it in and around the Santa Fe National Forest seem to be the major nest of reptiloid/gray forces in North America, although there is also a large number of dens scattered throughout the underground networks between. Dulce seems to be a major through point for exterran and subterranean reptilian activity, a central infiltration zone for surface operatives, as well as an operational base for abduction, implantation, mutilation agendas, and also a major convergence for sub-shuttle terminals, UFO ports, and so on. Branton, Q. Others have suggested that some of the entities below Dulce are not of extraterrestrial origin, and that they are actually descended from saurian or reptiloid beings such as the velociraptors or Stenonychosaurus equalis, a serpentine race or races similar to that hinted at in the 3rd chapter of the Book of Genesis? Answer: yes. Some reptoids are native to this planet. The ruling caste of aliens are reptilian. The beige or white beings are called the Draco. Other reptilian beings are green, and some are brown. They were an ancient race on Earth, living underground. It may have been one of the draconian beings that tempted even the Garden of Eden. Reptoids rightly consider themselves native to Terrans. Perhaps they are the ones we call the fallen angels. Maybe not. Either way, we are considered the squatters on Earth. Q. Some have suggested that the so-called underground T bases and tunnels may, for a large part, be literally thousands of years old. Constructions of an antediluvian race which attained to a considerable level of scientific complexity, and who were destroyed by a divinely initiated cataclysm which took place after they attempted to merge their science with occult/supernatural forces. For instance, some have suggested that the Bermuda Triangle phenomena may be the result of an out-of-control Atlantean experiment that led to a space-time disaster which produced electromagnetic fallout in the triangle area and elsewhere after they had accidentally loosed powerful forces and energies into the world that they knew very little about. Do your observations tend to confirm or refute such a possibility? Answer: I'm not sure about the divine part, but these aliens consider themselves native Terrans. Q. Where do the little gray aliens fit in? Answer: they work for, and are controlled by the Draco. There are other gray-skinned beings that are not in league with the Draco. Q. Did you ever talk to any of the aliens at the base? Answer: since I was the senior security technician at that base, I had to communicate with them on a daily basis. If there were any problems that involved security or video cameras, I was the one they called. It was the reptilian working caste that usually did the physical labor in the lower levels at Dulce. Decisions involving that caste were usually made by the white Draco. When human workers caused problems for the working caste, the reptoids went to the white Draconian boss, and the Draco called me. At times, it felt like it was a never-ending problem. Several human workers resented the no-nonsense or get-back-to-work attitude the working caste lives by. When needed, intervention became a vital tool. The biggest problem were human workers who foolishly wandered around near the off-limits areas of the alien section. I guess it's human nature to be curious and to wonder what is past the barriers. Too often someone found a way to bypass the barriers and nose around. The cameras near the entrance usually stopped them before they got themselves in serious trouble. A few times I had to formally request the return of a human worker. Q. Are there other sites tied into the shuttle network other than those which you mentioned, and if so, where are the entrances? Answer: where? Everywhere. They crisscross the world as an endless subterranean highway. Like a freeway, except this one is underground. The subterranean highway in America is like a freeway except it's underground. That highway depends on electric motors for trucks, cars and buses for the paved roads, and it is for limited travel. There is another style of transit for freight and for passengers that is for rapid travel. That worldwide network is called the subglobal system. It has checkpoints at each country entry. There are shuttle tubes that shoot the trains at incredible speeds using a maglev vacuum method. They travel at a speed that excels the speed of sound. Part of your question involves the location of entrances to that base. The easiest way to answer is to say every state in the USA has them. Frequently, the entrances are camouflaged as sand quarries or mining operations. Other complex portals are found on military bases. New Mexico and Arizona have the largest amounts of entrances, followed by California, Montana, Idaho, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Kansas, Arkansas and Missouri. Of all the states, Florida and North Dakota have the least amount of entrances. Wyoming has a road that opens directly into the subterranean freeway. That road is no longer in use, but could be reactivated if they decide to do so, with minimal cost. It's located near Brooks Lake. Q. Are there any bases in the state of Utah? Note: Thomas mentioned several areas surrounding Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada and Idaho, where there are connections, but little on Utah, which according to some sources lies directly over one of the largest natural cavern systems in North America, one that is said to reach deep beneath the Western Rockies as well as beneath the Bonneville Basin. Brenton, have you heard anything about an alleged underground installation within the Wasatch Mountains? Answer: Salt Lake, Lake Powell area, Dark Canyon, Dogway Grounds, Modena, Vernal. All have exits there. Others too. Note: there have been many rumors of ancient tunnel systems being intersected during the excavations of sub-basement levels below major industrial and mall areas in downtown Salt Lake City. Various stories surrounding these tunnels include explorers who have entered the tunnels and never returned. Reports of lizard people down in the labyrinths. Reports of greys working with humans on electronic equipment and massive building projects going on in huge caverns beneath the mountains to the east. Reports of humans who are part of an Asian-based Agari kingdom who maintain colonies within the tunnels and caverns below, and who are in conflict with the Reptiloids, Greys, and a group collaborating human fascists from a network of massive underground facilities beneath the Neuschwaben inland region of Antarctica. Reports of men in suits having been seen pacing back and forth through large underground chambers carrying Uzi machine guns. Reports of seemingly bottomless shafts. Large tunnels strung with lights that are big enough to drive a semi-truck through. Sections of tunnel walls that looked solid yet which one could put their hands through. Rooms which emanate a strange greenish phosphorescent glow. Abductees who are taken below and encounter all types of aliens. Discs that have been seen emerging from the mountains to the east and attacking incoming UFOs over the valley. Dungeons and Dragons fanatics who have been down in the tunnels and tell wild stories of hundreds of miles of maze-like passages. Reports of connections to the tunnel systems via the sewer drainage network, especially underneath the downtown crossroads area. Reports of alien activity similar to that which has been described in connection to Dulce, New Mexico. And reports of a huge cavern network that reaches beyond the border of the state in all directions, a huge network that connects the underground systems of Nevada with those of New Mexico. There is a famous story which is not openly talked about. There are two versions. Both may be true. In one version, a Mormon temple worker penetrated an underground tunnel below the square in downtown Salt Lake City and traveled for some distance through a series of underground catacombs until running into a lizard-like man. The creature attempted to attack him, but the man escaped and managed to find his way back to the surface. He began telling other people what had happened, and soon afterwards the government arrived in the area and went in and closed off many of the tunnels leading to the sub-basements of the temple. Presumably there was some heated debates over how much of the underground system this denomination was allowed to control. A similar dispute apparently occurred to the southwest, where the LDS Church maintained a large storage facility under Granite Mountain in Little Cottonwood Canyon, within the upper levels of a vast network of caverns. Fascist CIA elements and the Greys came in and took control of the larger caverns deeper within the mountain and ordered the vault workers to stay out of the forbidden areas, and stated that the U.S. government was now using them for national security purposes and that it was their patriotic duty to maintain the secret. The other version concerned a custodian who entered a tunnel near the cinemas area below the Crossroads Mall across the street and to the south from the Temple Square, while excavation was being carried out in that part of the mall. The worker entered the tunnel and before long encountered a serpent-type man, beat a hasty retreat, and told his fellow workers what he had seen. The FBI and the local police soon arrived and sealed the tunnel. Another story involved a young man who, along with a friend, had used a chain tied to his pickup truck to rip up a manhole cover in the area near the mall and the square. They navigated through a maze of sewer passages underneath and came to a shaft that descended in a series of 5 small rooms, one below the other, and from the bottom room a tunnel led south into a large chamber wherein they saw a seemingly bottomless shaft, a large southwest tunnel strung with lights and large enough to drive a semi through, and the footprints of some type of 3-toed bipedal creature. Other sources imply that early pioneers and settlers of the area who explored these tunnels came in contact with and in some cases even joined with some of the Telosian-Agharti-Melchizedek Mayan underground colonies below the Salt Lake Flats, the Salt Lake Valley and the Western Rockies. These subterraneans had formerly established territorial agreements with the reptiloids and greys before the aliens begun invading their subterranean lands below the Intermountain Western Mass in the early 1900s. The treaties were part of an attempt to stave off a possible interspecies conflict, as skirmishes between the humanoids, Turos, and reptiloids, Duros, within the cavern networks of North America had been increasing since the 1920s, 30s and 40s. Because of a somewhat non-exclusive collective mind with which these humans interacted, it was decided that one possible way to convert the reptilians into becoming beings of emotion and compassion was to allow them access to the group consciousness. The reptiloids, however, once given access, immediately began taking advantage of the collective and used it to control the humans on a subliminal basis. The ease with which this occurred may have been enhanced by the fact that the reptiloids and greys were already operating as part of a collective or group mind, one which was far more complex than the Ashtar or Astarte collective itself which many of the Agartians depended on. This suggests that the reptilian collective or hive itself is absolutely void of any care, concern or compassion for human beings. Individual reptiloids operating distinct from the draconian collective might however be tamed by other collective-free humanoids in some cases, as some have reportedly been tamed by the Andropleiadine worlds. If the non-humans could be severed from the collective, they might be deprogrammed and reprogrammed so to speak and even attain individual awareness and a degree of emotionalism. In such cases it would not be advisable to give these creatures equal standing among humans, and absolute subservience and monitoring should be enforced even if means were found to sever them from the collective mind network. When dealing with the reptilian forces, unconditional surrender should be first offered, and if this is not accepted then direct military action would be justified especially in light of the many permanent abductees whom the greys and reptiloids have taken captive, those who are still alive, to their underground systems. Most of the treaties that the humanoids had made with the reptiloids down under have since been broken. Especially following the Groom Wars of 1975 and the Dulce Wars of 1979, during which time much of the underground United States-based networks, which were funded by American tax dollars by the way, were taken over by the Greys. Some sources have implied that the aliens took advantage of the chaos especially during the Dulce Wars and commenced to invade and conquer several of the older underground colonies. This apparently led to a rift in the Ashtar collective, with many humanoids and hybrids splitting off and joining with the Andropleiadine Federation non-interventionists, and many reptiloids and heartless humanoid agents splitting off and joining with the interventionists of the Draco-Orion Empire. The Sirius B system which, aside from Arcturus and Sol, has been the major center of Ashtar activity, has since been shaken by this split between the two opposing Ashtarian factions and war had reportedly raged through the Sirius system for several years, according to some contactees. An apparent reflection of the division within the underground networks of North America between the Pleiadine-backed Syrian humanoids and Orion-backed Syrian reptiloids, which both had maintained operations within the underground levels before the Dulce Wars broke out. The Dulce Wars were just the mere tip of the proverbial iceberg when we consider that the overall events which happened at Dulce had a chain reaction effect throughout this whole sector of not the galaxy. Before the division occurred, the reptiloids were invited to take part in peace talks in Telos and elsewhere as an act of good faith, But the reptiloid Grey collectivists were more interested in expanding their empire and feeding their insatiable appetite for conquest than they were in making peace, although they agreed to peace treaties that they never intended to keep for Trojan horse manipulation purposes. There is a remnant collaboration such as that taking place in the underground facilities near Paradox, Nevada, where collectivist humanoids and reptiloids from Sirius and Sol still maintain a collaboration of necessity, in order to establish a global control system. However, a large number of humanoids within the underground systems are at war with the collectivist interventionist reptilian infiltrators who would otherwise assimilate these humanoids into their collective through deception, espionage and mind control. Now several contactees like Alex Collier, Ray Keller, Stan Johnson and others are claiming that the conflicts in Sirius between the Andropleiodine-backed Ashtar forces and the Draco-Orion-backed Ashtar forces, which were infiltrated and commandeered by Draco-Orion agents, have now spread to the Sol system, as both stellar superpowers have focused on this most strategic system, intent on protecting their respective interests here from being subverted by the other side. Branton, Q. Does the Mount Archuleta shuttle system connect with a shuttle system which allegedly radiates from Mount Shasta in Northern California? Yes. Mount Shasta is a major site of alien, elder race, reptilian race, human meetings. Beginning Cleveland, Grover, every president in the United States history have visited Telos City. Truman was supposed to have visited the lower realms as a high archon on Earth. He was supposed to have met the king of the world there, and gave him the keys to the USA. Note, whether or not the reigning king of the Agardi realms at the time had benevolent or other motives, subjecting America to an outside superpower without congressional consent would be considered high treason. Although unelected/appointed individuals working within the executive military-industrial branch of government might choose to do so of their own volition without congressional or senatorial consent, such an act cannot apply to the America which is based on the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. There are apparently two nations occupying the United States, the traditional grassroots America established by the Founding Fathers and led by the electorate government, and the fascist Bavarian lodge-backed underground nation led by the corporate government which is contesting the original America on its own soil. Some predict an inevitable civil war between the electorate/constitutional/surface government of the United States and the joint humanoid reptiloid corporate/national global socialist/underground New World Order government, which incidentally was bought and paid for by American taxpayers and other unsavory money-making projects. This war will apparently provoke an armed United Nations/New World Order invasion of the USA, which, according to George Washington's famous vision at Valley Forge in 1777, will ultimately end with an American victory as a result of divine intervention. Something like this may be inevitable if freedom is to be preserved on this world, and beyond. We should never forget, however, that the new corporate elite and their draconian masters intend to depopulate the surface of this planet and the underground systems as well. According to one Navy intelligence source, the 33+ Masons, there are allegedly several degrees above the 33rd degree which interact directly with the Draconians and are part of the interplanetary initiatory lodges, intend to set the left-wing caverns and the right-wing caverns against each other in order to depopulate the underground realms so that they can impose absolute Bavarian Draconian global control of both worlds. The 33+ and higher degrees, according to this source, intend to ride out the inferno in super-secret fortified caverns, while the 33rd and lower degree Masons and their respective left-wing and right-wing armies will be left to die in the surface and subsurface wars. It may be that some of the 33+ Masons intend to ride out the Holocaust in their alternative 3 bases on the Moon and Mars, if those bases are still active. Remember, the roots of both the right-wing National Socialist and the left-wing Global Socialist agendas trace back to Bavaria. Isn't it interesting that the legendary dragon has 2 wings, a right wing and a left wing, both of which are controlled by a single beast? In essence, when it comes right down to it, the war is between the Judeo-Christian-based Constitutional Republic of America and the Luciferian cult-based Socialist Empire of Bavaria. Both the right and left-wing movements are Machiavellian extremes created by the Bavarian black nobility. Black here being a reference to something hidden that cannot be seen, and not skin color, in order to foment global chaos. There are several claims that the collaboration with the reptilians began with the Luciferian cults of Bavaria, and was later brought into America via the infiltration of the Scottish Rite and the fascist core of the NSA-CIA. There may have nevertheless been a reptilian presence below North America within the caverns that dates back several centuries. However, a massive reptilian infestation of these underground systems seems to have begun near the beginning of the 20th century. Mount Archuleta might be considered the capital of the alien segment of the secret, Bavarian Draconian New World Order government in America, with the deep underground systems beneath the Denver International Airport being the capital of the human segment of the secret government. Branton. Truman received assurance to new high-tech knowledge, and victory over all enemies on Earth. He then was introduced to Samaza and Coach, aliens from Boots and Teflon Draco, both reptilian kings or ambassadors. Truman updated the Single Quote 100 treaty that began in 1933, Roosevelt, and requested magnetic advance, space knowledge and experiments. Coach agreed, Samaza partially agreed. He exchanged hostages for genetic experiments and magnetic advance, but vetoed space and beam weaponry. Q. Did you notice any involvement of high-level Freemasons, Rosicrucians or Jesuits within the underground installation and/or with the aliens? Note, this question is based on the assumption made by some researchers that many of the Masonic lodges were, beginning about 1776, infiltrated by the Bavarian Illuminati. Much of the Masonic world is ultimately controlled by the Bavarian Lodge-backed 33+ degrees of Scottish Rite Masonry, a rite which according to early Masonic authority Rebold can be traced back to the Jesuit College at Clermont in Paris, a rite which advocates the destruction of national sovereignties in exchange for world government, the destruction of religious and especially Judeo-Christian movements, and the destruction of the family structure to be replaced by state control of children, etc., as opposed to the more traditional Protestant Christianized York Rite of Masonry which the Scottish Rite has attempted to subvert since its inception into Masonry. This question was also based on claims from a former 33rd degree Mason, James Shaw, that the Scottish Rite headquarters in the House of the Temple, which lies at the northern apex of the pentagram-like street layout of Washington, D.C., is filled with all kinds of indications of serpent worship in the form of murals, carvings, statues, etc., depicting serpentine figures. Actually, from what my sources tell me, not only are there degrees beyond the 33rd degree, but the 33rd degree itself is made up of two cores, an inner and outer core, the 33rd degree and the 33+ degree. In the past, when the 33rd degree initiation was reached, the potential initiate might have been given a Bible or a cross and asked to spit on it or desecrate it in some manner. If they refused to do this, they were told that they had made the right decision and remained in the outer core of the 33rd degree, thinking that they had finally arrived. If they did or to commit this form of blasphemy, then they are told that they have made the right decision, and they are sent on to the inner core of the 33+ degree, which is the springboard to the higher levels, which interact with the joint humanoid reptiloid Asterian lodges or branches of the serpent cult on other planets, within underground cities, and possibly even other dimensions. One source informs me that former President George Herbert Walker Bush, who was at one time the head of MJ-12, had attained to the 42nd degree, however he may have attained to even higher levels since that time. I would guess that the one who holds the highest level of initiation would be the Dragon King of Draconis himself, or whatever appellation the leader or the leaders of the Draconian Empire may go by. Branton. Answer: yes, I did, but that is a loaded question, and I won't comment further. I'm not a Mason, or member of any other secret fraternal group. There is one organization I am a member of in the U.S.A. That group is commonly called the Central Unit. It is a pleasure to tell you that I am a member of the Subgalactic League of Costa Rica. Q. Is there any truth to the allegations that the CIA/aliens have established bases on the Moon, and also Mars? Answer: I've heard that too, but I haven't seen proof with my own eyes. The aliens do allegedly have bases on several moons of Jupiter and Saturn. The CIA operates in other countries, but I've never heard they operate on other planets. Note: perhaps we should have referred to the CIA's superior agency, the NSA, whose personnel reportedly pilot the black budget UFOs between the Luna and Dreamland bases. Branton. Q. Have you heard any hints or rumors suggesting that there may be lower levels beneath the Ultra 7 level of the Dulce base, and also, where these might lead to and what they might consist of? Answer: yes. Your guess is as good as mine. Sure, there was lots of talk, but that doesn't mean it's there. However, I will tell you I saw elevators that were off-limits unless you had an Umbra or higher security clearance. At the base, information is supplied to me at a need-to-know basis only. My clearance was Ultra 7, Q, Some insist that the US/secret government has developed its own test craft based largely upon top-secret anti-gravity experiments carried out by the Nazi German scientists during World War II. Have you heard anything referring to this? Answer: when I was working in photo security, heard a lot of talk, never saw the proof, but once in the Air Force I developed a roll of film that showed a craft like Adamski's, with a swastika on the side. Note, a letter from R. J.M. of Pennsylvania dated January 31, 1991 stated, I have a lot of UFO videos. I also have The Secret Land, 1947. It shows Bunger's Oasis and says they discovered warm land at the South Pole. One German author claims the Nazis had a photo finish fight with Bird. At the end of the movie, it says, Bird's intrepid 4,000 met and defeated Antarctica's toughest battalions. I don't think they were talking about the weather. Another source has stated that there were losers on both sides, and the battle for Antarctica against the Nazis' last battalion, which had fortified themselves in underground bases below the mountains of Neuschwabenland, Antarctica, ended in a stalemate. Question: why would Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun commit suicide after Hitler had spent so much energy executing over 5,000 Nazi officials whom he suspected were behind his assassination attempt at the Wolf Bunker, especially if he had a way out via a secret Nazi South Polar base? The March 18, 1994 issue of the Plain Dealer, Cleveland, Ohio, carried an AP story titled, Doctors Find Burnt Body Could Not Be Hitler's. Excerpts include: French forensic experts say the charred corpse said to be Hitler's is not his body. Experts falsified verification reports ordered by Joseph Stalin to appease the Soviet dictator. The body is actually that of an unknown German male. The forensic experts spent more than 2 years analyzing the autopsy reports prepared by Soviet coroners in the days following the surrender of the Third Reich in 1945. The body, said to be Hitler's, had an extra tooth and only one testicle. No German doctor who had examined Hitler before his death ever mentioned either anomaly. This is also interesting when we consider that the well-known abductee, Barney Hill, remembered the following experience under regressive hypnosis as recorded in the Paranormal Encyclopedia, Mysteries of Mind, Space and Time. Barney and his wife Betty were abducted by gray-skinned humanoids from Zeta Reticuli. However, one of the beings on the craft was described by Barney Hill under regressive hypnosis in the following words, which are taken from p.1379 of the encyclopedia. Another figure has an evil face. He looks like a German Nazi. He's a Nazi. His eyes. His eyes. I've never seen eyes like that before. Remember that this occurred nearly 15 years after Europe had supposedly been denazified. There seems to be an Antarctic connection with the Dulce scenario as well as other possible Nazi connections. German tourists scouring New Mexico, exploring mines and caves, and buying up land and mineral rights just before the outbreak of World War II. The Nazi-connected CIA's involvement and their placement of several Nazi SS agents, who had been brought into the United States via Project Paperclip, within the Dulce and other underground facilities. The involvement of secret Bavarian lodges at Dulce, and the possible Antarctic and Dulce connection to Alternative 003 single quote. Another interesting connection is the fact that the secret Nazi teams involved in the construction and operation of the underground bases below the mountains of Neuschwabenland and elsewhere in Antarctica were called Ultra teams. Ultra is also the code name for the Dulce base. Also, there seems to be a direct connection between the Dulce base and the Montauk base in Long Island, which was / reputedly jointly operated by the Draconian Reptiloids, Orion Greys and the Bavarian Thule Society, which had backed the Nazi agenda. Branton, Q. Tom, did you have access to the alien craft? Were you ever inside any of them? Answer: yes, I frequently saw them in the garages. There are quite a few of them. The main fleet is stored at Los Alamos. Yes, I entered several crafts. There were two things that stick in my mind: the odd spongy feeling of the floors, and the unusual pinkish-purple color of the lighting. The crew stated the floor becomes rigid in flight, and the purple tint of the lighting changes to bright blue-white. The entire inside of the aircraft are scaled down in size, when compared to the average human. The holes were curved and narrow, but somehow, when inside it appears bigger than it looks. Certain areas, the outermost sections, almost felt and looked alive. I was never taken up in one. Q. Can you give me more information on the reptilian race? What do they do on the 6th level? The area called Nightmare Hall. Answer: the worker caste does the daily chores, mopping the latex floors, cleaning the cages, bringing food to the hungry people and other species. It is their job to formulate the proper mixture for the Type 1 and Type 2 beings that the Draco race has created. The working caste work at the labs as well as at the computer banks. Basically speaking, the reptilian races are active at all levels of the Dulce base. There are several different races of aliens that work on the E section at level 6, no doubt some collaborating Nordic factions included. Branton. That section is commonly called the alien section. The Draco are the undisputed masters of the 5-6-7 levels. The humans are second in command of those levels. I had to argue with one large Draconian boss frequently. His name is difficult to verbalize. Karshfest, pronounced throaty K-I-S-S-H-F-S-S-D. I usually called him Karsh, and he hated it. The Draconian leaders are very formal when talking to the human race. These ancient beings consider us a lower race. Karsh called me Leader Costello, but it was used in a sarcastical way. However, the worker caste is friendly enough, as long as you allow them to speak first. They will answer if you address them. They are very cautious beings, and consider most humans to be hostile. They always seem surprised when they found many of the humans were open and trustworthy. There is no fraternizing with the aliens off hours. It is forbidden to speak to any alien race in the halls or an elevator without a clear business-oriented reason. Humans can talk to humans, and aliens can speak to aliens, but that is as far as it goes. At the worksite, however, it's different. There is free speech in the labs. The camaraderie found in the labs also reaches the computer bank section. In those areas, everybody talks to anybody. However, everything changes the minute you cross the threshold of the hall. Instantly, all conversations become strictly formal. Hard as it was, several times I had to arrest someone, simply because they spoke to an alien. It's a strange place. Q. Exactly what first made you aware that something was wrong at Dulce? Seems to me that a place as obviously horrible as this one wouldn't need an Einstein to know that this is a crime site. What took you so long? Are you the guy who blew the whistle? Answer. There are several things you should know about. I took an oath, under the penalty of death, that no matter what I saw or heard I would never divulge the information. Also, I signed a waiver that states I would willingly give up my life if I was found guilty of treason. At the Dulce base, treason is anything that mentions the details of daily operations at this facility, when outside the confinement of this base. When I first arrived, a need-to-know policy was in effect. The story the honchos told us was that this is a tri-biotransfer facility with advanced technology, doing advanced adventurous methodology for medical and mental gains. Which is a fancy way of saying they do really risky things with human life just to see what would happen. If a medical cure happens, it will be heralded on the surface of the earth as a marvelous new cure, saying it was found after years of research at some well-known medical lab. The real story of the cure is never explained. After all, the Dulce base is a secret facility. These people are very good at what they do. They do not tell the truth about the unfortunate people that end up in Nightmare Hall. I worked with aliens. With that in mind, you should get the idea of the secrecy and the security at that place. Yes, I know this was not the usual hospital-type job site, but in the beginning I bought the whole package. I was reminded daily by intercom, in the elevators, that this site does high-risk advanced medical and drug testing to cure insanity. Please, never speak to the inmates, it can destroy years of work. I'm sensible. When doctors say don't speak to them, who was I to destroy the delicate situation? But one man somehow caught my eye. He repeatedly stated that he was George S... and that he had been kidnapped and he was sure someone was searching for him. I don't know why he sticks in my mind. I found I was remembering his face, thinking he sure didn't look or sound insane, but many inmates said that. The next weekend I convinced a friend of mine, a cop, to run a check on the guy, saying I had a run-in with him and was curious. I didn't mention the base at all. It was a sickening feeling when the computer confirmed that George S. was missing. What's worse, the cops thought he was just another guy that got tired of the daily grind and split. That was the beginning. Am I the one that blew the whistle? No. The next Monday, I searched for George, but he was gone. There were no records that explained what happened to him. It was another security officer that came to me saying he and some lab workers wanted an off-duty meeting at one of the tunnels, off the record. Curiosity took over and I said okay. That night, about 9 men showed up. They said they knew they were risking me turning them in, but they wanted to show me some things they thought I should see. One by one they showed records that proved many inmates were missing people. There were newspaper clippings, and even photos that they had somehow smuggled into the base. They hoped to smuggle them back out, without me turning them into the honchos. I could see the fear in their faces as they spoke. One man stated he would rather lose his life by trying, than to lose his soul by not doing anything at all. It was that remark that turned the tide. I told them about George and the things I found out about him. After a few hours we pledged to attempt to expose the Dulce base. Q. The name Nightmare Hall is descriptive, but surely there was a regular name. What was it called in the manuals? Answer. In the manuals it was called the Vivarium. It describes Dulce base as a secured facility for attending bioforms of all types. In their report it is retold as a private subterranean bioterminal park, with accommodations for animals, fish, fowl, reptile, and mankind. After seeing this park, the name Nightmare Hall is far more accurate than the manual. The accommodations for the inmates at Nightmare Hall fall short of the pretty picture the manual describes. Q. You mentioned one reptilian leader, Fest. Do you know anything about him, like where is he from? Is he from Earth or some other planet? Answer. His name means, Keeper of the Laws. They receive their name after they reach the age of awareness. They do not recognize time as an important factor in being aware the way humans do. Upon their age of awareness, they are cognitive of the station or position they are destined to fulfill. At that time they chose or allow someone to choose their name. Their name will include the position they hold in several personally chosen letters. Each letter has a personal meaning, known only to the alien and the one that chose their name. Since Karsh's name means Keeper of the Laws, his name includes Karsh, memory or keep, base word for Akashic, record, and fast, law, base word fast or bind. Reptilians choose to be not only private but secretive of the location of their natal place. To them birth, or emergence of life, is considered as one of the sacred rites of life. They consider Earth or Terra their home planet, but several reptoids discuss several star maps. Most of those stars were within the Milky Way. Within those star maps lies the stars and planets of the allegiance. Earth being one of the planets in their trade routes. If any human asked clear questions about the allegiance, the aliens referred the questions to the Draco. The Draco in turn, referred the questions to their supervisor, me. I did not have that information about the stars, because information was supplied on a need-to-know basis. I didn't need that information. Q. Did any of the working caste join in the revolt? Could you give me some names? Answer. A few of the reptilian janitorial crew let us know that they knew we were attempting to sabotage the work going on in the 6th and 7th levels. One of them, with the name Shal, secretly formed a small group of reptoids with the same mindset as my group. Note, take note of the similarity between this scenario and the NBC miniseries V, which is now available on video cassette after years of non-availability. I have it on good authority that the original author of the V idea was an investigator who knew Thomas Costello on a personal basis. He had connections in Hollywood and had written a motion picture script, which was in turn seen and borrowed without permission by an NBC employee and rewritten as a miniseries. The show was based on reptilian humanoids from Sirius B who had come to Earth under the guise of benevolent human-like space brothers to bring a new order of universal peace. In reality they had a secret agenda to rape planet Earth of her resources and steal her people for biological sustenance. This agenda was being contested by a human resistance who refused to fall for the reptilians' facade, and these resistors were in turn working with a secret fifth column of reptilians who did not agree with their leader's agenda for planet Earth. Could this mini-series have had an actual basis in a bizarre reality? Branton. Schall took upon himself the danger of informing me. He was as open as is possible in the unique situation. On the day I found out about it, I was inspecting a camera near an exit tunnel. He approached, stooped down. The tall reptiloids average about 7-8 feet in height according to most witnesses, Branton, seemingly scraping some non-existent dirt, and he quietly said, "A few of us agreed that you were singular in your interest in missing human reports. If true, walk away. I'll reach you. If it's untrue, destroy my life now." My heart almost leapt out of my chest, but I silently walked toward one of the wide halls. For the rest of my life I'll remember those words. It was the first time I knew reptilians could have individual thoughts and opinions. Basically, They formed a uniform front with a small variety of interests. Or at least, that was what we had thought. It was a couple days before I heard from him again. As he walked beside me in the 6th level's infamous hall, I heard him say, "Enter the exit tunnel on the 6th level, north, after your shift." The next few hours were long and filled with thoughts of betrayal, or worse, but I shouldn't have worried. I contacted one of the original 9 resistance men, and let him know, just in case. Gordon wanted to go with me, but I convinced him to wait a few feet from the exit and pretend he was having trouble with his cart, electric, like a golf cart. When I got there, there were 3 of them. Shaw formerly introduced Fast Shaw and Huam Shaw. Named base word is Shaw or assist. With that, I quickly grabbed Gordon from the hall and the 5 of us talked and walked in the dark tunnels about 3 hours. After that day, the joint resistance group got bigger and bolder. Ultimately, it ended when a military assault was initiated via the exit tunnels and they executed anybody on their list, human or rebellion. We fought back, but none of the working caste had weapons, nor did the human lab workers. Only the security force and a few computer workers had flash guns. It was a massacre. Everyone was screaming and running for cover. The halls and tunnels were filled as full as possible. We believe it was the Delta Force because of the uniforms and the method they used that chose to hit at shift change, an effort that killed as many as named on their list. Note, if Thomas Costello is correct in his assertion, then based on his overall revelations, as well as the revelations of others such as Robert Lazar, Phil Schneider, etc., the Dulce Wars were the result of at least 5 overlapping factors or scenarios which converged at more or less the same time or played into each other. This may have also involved a conflict of interest within MJ-12 itself, and apparently involved different security forces including the Delta Force, Black Berets, Air Force Blue Berets, Secret Service, FBI Division 5, CIA Stormtroopers, and Dulce Base Security. The various factors which seem to have played into the Dulce Wars would include animosity towards the Greys for their slaughter of several scientists and security personnel in the Groom Wars below Area 51 3 years earlier as described by former MJ-12 Special Studies Group Agent Michael Wolff. Accidental encounters between aliens and human construction workers and security forces near Dulce as described by Phil Schneider. An attack on the Dulce base resistance that was apparently ordered by die-hard collaborators and deep-level intelligence as described by Thomas Costello. An attempt to rescue several of our best scientists who had been captured by the aliens after they had discovered the Grant deception involving a violation of the established treaties, that is the permanent abduction of thousands of humans to the Dulce and other bases for God only knows what purposes, as described by John Lear. Could it be that MJ-12/PI-40 was unaware of these abductees, yet their superior agency the Black Monk/Magic Agency was aware and had agreed to an actual exchange of human life for technology? And another factor would involve a dispute over whether human security personnel could carry flash guns as opposed to machine guns. All of these were apparently contributing factors to the altercations which raged throughout the Dulce base beginning in 1979. Branton. We, to this day, do not know who betrayed us. Gordon Henry ran beside me as we ran into the 3rd level exit tunnels, and he died when several bullets slammed into his back. I vaporized that assassin and kept running. And I'm still running. Gordon will be remembered. Q. Tell me more about the flash gun. Is it difficult to operate, or is it like the weapon on Star Trek, that can stun or kill on different modes? Answer. It is an advanced beam weapon that can operate on 3 different phases. Phase 1, like Star Trek, can stun and maybe kill, if the person has a weak heart. On Phase 2, it can levitate anything no matter what it weighs. Phase 3 is the serious business mode. It can be used to paralyze anything that lives, animal, human, alien and plant. On the higher position on the same mode, it can create a temporary death. I assure you, any doctor would certify that person is dead, but their life essence lingers in some strange limbo, some kind of terrible state of non-death. In 1 to 5 hours the person will revive, slowly. First the bodily functions will begin, and in a few minutes, consciousness followed with full awareness. In that mode the alien scientists reprogram the human brain and plant false information. When the person awakes, he recalls the false information as information he gained through life experience. There is no way for a person to learn the truth. The human mind remembers and believes completely the false data. If you attempt to inform them, they would laugh or get angry. They never believe the truth. Their mind always forgets the experience of reprogramming. You asked if the flash gun is difficult to operate. A 2-year-old child could use it with one hand. It resembles a flashlight, with black glass conical inverted lens. On the side are 3 recessed knobs and 3 curved grooves. Each knob is sized differently. The closer the knob to the hand, the less the strength. It's that simple. Each knob has 3 strengths also, with automatic stops at each position. The strongest position will vaporize anything that lives. That mode is so powerful it will leave no trace of what it vaporized. Q. Is the weapon called a flash gun, or is there a different name in the manuals? Answer. Everybody calls them flash guns, or more commonly, the flash or my flash when talking about it. In the manual it is first introduced as the Armorlock's weapon. After that, it is explained as the flash gun. Q. What type of security is found at the Dulce base? What else is used against espionage or unauthorized entry? Answer. I'll mention a few, but it would be nearly impossible to cover it all. The weapon, besides the flash gun, mostly used as a form of sonic. Built in with each light fixture and most camcorders is a device that could render a man unconscious in seconds with nothing more than a silent tone. At Dulce there also are still on VCR cameras, eye print, handprint stations, weight monitors, lasers, L-phenom equipment, heat sensors and motion detectors, and quite a few other methods. There is no way you could get very far into the base. If you made it to the 2nd level, you would be spotted within 15 feet. More than likely, you would become an inmate and never see the light of the surface world again. If you were lucky, you would be reprogrammed and become one of the countless spies for the ruling caste. Q. According to certain reports, the Dulce base is host to other aliens that live in level 5. Is that true? Can the humans freely roam or meet one-to-one in the halls, or is some type of protocol in effect? Answer. There is protocol from the first time you enter the base, and it must be followed every time you see an alien there. From the working caste, to the visiting aliens, to the ruling caste, there is a never-ending checklist of rules, law, and strict protocol. There is never a chance to roam on the 5th level. The alien housing area is off-limits to any human. The hub is surrounded by security, arsenal, military and CIA/FBI sections. The area past the security is one of the most secured areas because it houses so many classified files. The entire east side of the 5th level is off-limits except for security personnel holding Ultra 7 security clearance or higher. The garage on the west side of the 5th level requires Ultra 4 clearance. Q. Is there proof available that could confirm the allegations of the underground base, or are we just supposed to believe you? Answer. Many people have asked that one. No, I don't expect people to believe with blind faith. There's tangible proof that has been seen, felt or inspected by quite a few folks. I'm in no position to go on a lecture circuit to explain to every person on a one-to-one basis. I am trying to stay alive. All I can do is state again, that Dulce is a secret facility. They work hard to make sure nobody can find the place. If everyone could easily find it, it wouldn't be a secret facility. I've explained the extreme security methods they use. There is other proof available. There are 5 sets of copies in 5 different boxes in 5 different locations that hold complete proof of everything I have tried to explain. Here is a list of contents of each box delivered into the safekeeping of 5 individuals known only to Thomas Costello and to the individual recipients. Branton, 827 sheets of 8x10 photographs of aliens, creatures, cages and vats. B. 1 silent candid videotape, begins on the computer banks, shows the vats, multi-shots of Nightmare Hall, 2 shots of Grays, 1 shot of the terminal showing sign saying to Los Alamos and about 30 seconds of the shuttle train arriving. C. 25 pages of diagrams, chemical formulas and schematics of alien equipment. D. A copy of the new treaty complete with signatures. E. 2 pages of original alien documents signed by Ronald Reagan as Governor of California. Each page includes Reagan's signature. The original set mentioned above is sealed in one-piece oxygen-free heavy plastic box. That set includes 827 sheets of 8x10 with original negatives. B. The videotape, and the original microfilm, from which the videotape was copied. C. The 25 original pages of diagrams with notations, formulas, alien equipment schematics plus the schematics for the flash gun and my flash gun. D. The treaty with Reagan's signature plus 7 other political signatures and 4 alien signatures. The working flash gun in that box is an extremely dangerous weapon. In the wrong hands, there's no limit on the danger it could inflict. That proof must be protected. But when placed in the hands of certain government agencies, it would not be treated as proof for an alien visitation. That government branch knows the truth and they publicly lie. Think about it like this: do you know, for certain proof, that George Washington lived? Or do you believe what other people said about him? There is no one alive that saw with their own eyes what is claimed about him. You judge all you know about him by what other people said. Columbus said there is a new land, and it was found. I am saying there are aliens in several underground bases in this country and terrible things happen in those places. If I die before it is proven, search for proof. After all, the Dulce base and the other bases aren't going anywhere. Unlike UFOs themselves, they are not here today and gone tomorrow. If they are there, then there are bound to be some indications of the fact. Branton. Demand that the government admit it. If enough people demand it, they will find a way to explain the base, or at least explain why they must keep it secret. There are many people that work at the Dulce base that know me. I am challenging those co-workers to speak up, at least anonymously. Send a letter, or a telegram, or fax, to confirm what I have explained. In the name of the brave men, women, children and aliens that died trying to let the public know what is going on at the Dulce facility, expose that horrid place before thousands more innocent people are tortured and die unspeakable deaths. Q. What about the elevators? Do they drop from the surface to the 7th level in a couple of seconds? Do you know anything about them? Are they electrically lifted? Everywhere on the surface world there are elevators made by Otis Elevator Company. Does that company make the elevators at Dulce? Answer. I failed to notice what brand was available in the elevators at the base. I could tell you that there is no elevator anywhere at Dulce that drops from the surface to the 7th level. The security blueprints show the levels are stepped down. Each level drops one floor only. Not even the hub has an express elevator. After the 3rd level, not only would you change elevators, you were weighed and color-coded before you re-enter the car. All the elevators are magnetically controlled, even lights in elevators, as well as all lights on all levels are magnetically induced. The light bulbs are not the type bought on the surface, but a totally different type of light system. The illumination found there is a closer match to natural sunlight than any artificial light on the surface world. The shape of the elevators is unique. If you had ever seen a Tupperware sugar bowl, you could see the shape copied in the elevator. Sort of like an open-ended oval with another half-oval on each side. The elevator shaft matches this shape perfectly. The magnetic controls are in a half-oval shape. If you could stand in or close to the half-ovals, you would feel the slight pull of the power of those magnets. The motion is smooth and silent. There is a nearly unnoticed surge when the motion starts or stops. There are no cables needed, because the lift is magnetic, not electric. Since there are no cables in the elevator cars, there is no chance of them falling. Q. I understand that certain groups of cleared individuals in the government are collaborating with alien groups. Is it known how many groups and of what type they are working with? Answer. I don't know how many groups or what type they are working with. Q. A mysterious security man calling himself Agent Yellowfruit says he worked at Groom Lake, Area 51. The security officer states that he's been in contact with benevolent aliens at the Groom Lake facility. Are you aware of such a group? Answer. Yellowfruit is one of the slang names for yellow jack or yellow flag that shows quarantine and caution in the labs. There are so many different slang names at Dulce labs that meant quarantine that the workers published a booklet to show the meanings. At Dulce, Yellowfruit are the lab workers, saw call from the yellow light outside the decontamination chambers. Banana is the older workers, lemon is the new guys, and so on. Q. Is there an alien installation under a papoose lake at the Nevada test site, and are they conducting biological research at these sites? Answer. Most of the stuff at the Groom facility deals with defense, but there is a large storage area in the tunnels that holds thousands of alien craft parts. From what I have heard, the medical tests at the Nevada test site are conducted by and for the Navy. Q. According to my sources, the aerospace companies have a secret underground installation in the Tehachapi Mountains, not far from Rosamond near Edwards F. Insiders refer to the Tehachapi installment as the Ant Hill. They are experimenting with advanced technology such as anti-gravity discs. Some have seen basketball-sized floating orbs patrol the facility. Do you have any further information on this? Answer. The California mountains, Tehachapi, chocolate, Shasta, etc. all have alien security methods and equipment. The basketball-size orbs are used for unmanned patrol. They are silent, but when photographing living beings there is a humming sound. The glow that emits light is magnetic aura. This light is in the visible spectrum, 3,900 angstroms. You can see the light, but the light does not reflect off anything. Q. Is there anything you can tell me about the moon, alien installations? Atmosphere? The United States bases? Answer. There is not much I can tell you there. I wasn't in the lunar program. I heard there was a lot of equipment sent to the moon between 1959 to 1964 under Project Whiteout. Q. How do the aliens use magnetism? Do they use it as an energy source? Is there more we need to know about magnetism? Answer. The aliens use magnetics for everything. They use magnetics as the basic structure for their energy source. The more you learn about magnetics, the better. The human race calls them magnets. The aliens call them lodestar. They have been harvesting lodestars, lodestones, for centuries. Not only that, they want all the magnetic power on Earth. They intend to continue harvesting that power, now and in the future. As long as we were only using magnetic power as an oddity, there was no problem. But in recent times, the human race has begun using magnetic power and finding more ways to utilize that commodity. There was a treaty made. In the original treaty, the human race, or those who supposedly represented the human race, if you could call it that, Brenton didn't mind at all. We considered magnets as hardly more than useless. As people searched for another source for power, we turned to magnetics. The aliens wanted a new treaty. What could we offer? They chose land, underground mining rights, animals and humans for new experiments. The general public never knew about the treaty. The governmental Bavarian cultist heads of the world chose another treaty in 1933. This time, we got high-tech knowledge in exchange. So now, the more we use magnetics, the more they claim humans, and the lands of the USA we were sold in exchange for magnets. If you doubt it, look around. There are token companies that really utilize magnetic power, but are depending on electric-based or ceramic magnets, not lodestar magnetic oxide of iron-based magnets. Q. What do the aliens do with the cow blood and other parts from mutilated animals? Do they need these fluids for research or survival? Answer. The aliens use the blood and body parts for formula to keep them alive, their food, and for use in the growing vats, and for the artificial wombs. Plasma and amniotic fluid are the two most vital ingredients for their lives. Also, the sap of some plants can keep them alive for months. Most of the plants are parasitic in nature, but red grapes and okra plants can also be added to the formula to keep them alive, if they have no regular formula. Q. Female abductees report being inseminated by aliens. Are they trying to hybridize our species? Answer. Yes, they are breeding slave warriors for the upcoming war with the alien races, the Nordic races. Branton. The serpentine races are in orbit around Earth, Venus and Mars. Q. Abductees have reported that the aliens can pass their bodies and that of the abductee through window glass. Is this a feat of magic achieved by advanced technology or is it a psychic power? Answer. The aliens have mastered atomic matter. They can go through walls like we go through water. It is not magic, just physics. We can learn to do the same thing. It is to do with controlling atoms at will. Q. Are you in communication with benevolent aliens or do you have contacts that are? If you are, can you tell us how we can communicate with their teams? Answer. I am not at liberty to discuss communications with any friendly alien life forms. I can tell you there is a friendly factor active in Costa Rica. I am in direct communication with that factor. I am an active member of the Subgalactic League of Costa Rica. This organization, using a small satellite dish, a television set and ham radio equipment reach this factor. I might suggest that by using similar equipment and a low-band frequency, you may reach the same factor. Q. Do you stay in the USA, or do you live abroad? Do you work now? I know you have been on the run for several years. Answer. Yeah, quite a few years. I visit the United States, but it's really dangerous when I do. I've lived in several countries. I spent a few years in Mexico, working as a mercenary soldier. It's rough work, frequently living in the bush, eating whatever I couldn't find. I spent time in South America, fighting the drug cartel. It's not the citizens, it's the secret government, top officials in American alphabet boys, CIA, FBI, etc. I settled in Costa Rica, bought a small house in Limon. Actually it is a shanty that someone abandoned. I paid the equivalency of $11 to one of the local constables for the right to call it mine. My name changes when I think someone is asking questions. I worked in one of the underground bases near the Panama border. It's in the mountains, not very far from a passive but active volcano. It is not as fancy as Dulce, but the people are wonderful. Q. What is the best city in Costa Rica for an American to visit and maybe move to live? Answer. None of them are worth anything by comparison, but I like Limon. There is a real culture shock when you get past the tourist sections. Inside the urban areas, it's not so bad, but away from the beaten path the picture changes. There are no improvements in the shanties, no sewers, plumbing, or paved roads. But if you stay in the cities, and you don't mind the big difference in the cultures, the countries have a lot to offer. Nice weather, great beaches and beautiful trees with fruit growing everywhere. Q. Are there any other security level names other than secret, top secret, ultra? Answer. There are many other security clearances. Here are a few: Umbra, Stellar, G2-7Z, Triad, Universal Military Training, and Universal Military Service, Astral and Subastral. Umbra is higher than Ultra. Note, it may be conceivable that some of the higher security clearances are used for the joint human-alien interstellar projects. For instance, Whitley Strieber described an abduction to another planetary sphere where he encountered ancient ruins, aliens and human personnel dressed in military khakis and carrying camcorders, automatic weapons, etc. Obviously such personnel would have to possess an extremely high security classification, such as Universal Military Service. For instance, the Joint Alien Illuminati Alternative 3 projects have reportedly taken part in joint offensive operations against the peaceful residents of other worlds. This according to a couple who defected from the Alternative 3 movement after an agent from the Federation warned them about such atrocities. Branton, Q. Ever see a badge with Magi? Answer. No. Q. Since you have lived in Spanish-speaking countries, it's obvious that you are bilingual. What other languages do you speak? Answer. Other than English, the only other languages I speak are Spanish and Yushu, the common language alien spoken at Dulce. I speak Spanish fluently, and enough Yushu to keep myself out of trouble. Shortly after I first transferred to Dulce, I took a crash course in Yushu. Anyone that plans to spend more than 1 week working at the base, they are wise to learn the basics. Otherwise, you are required to wait for an escort to get around. All the signs at that base are written in the universally recognized symbolic language. Yushu is logical and easy to learn. Q. What are the eating habits of the aliens? Are they carnivores? Answer. That depends whether they are one of the gray worker caste, one of the reptilian worker caste, or one of the higher developed draconian leaders. Also, the created beings, replicants, type to being, or one of the really strange genetic mixtures. I'll try to cover a little of each. The formula includes amniotic water, plasma and several other body parts, raw, usually bovine. This nearly clear mixture with a texture of pureed peaches, and almost in that color. The Greys make the attempt not to eat around the humans, because the odor of it is very unpleasant to any human. They can spend days or even weeks between feedings. The working caste of the reptilians eat meat, insects and a large variety of plants including vegetables and fruit. They prefer their meat raw and very fresh, but have learned to enjoy some cooked meat like rare beefsteak. Note, according to many abductees, the reptiloids are not above eating human flesh. It has been said that they prefer flesh that is young enough to be free of toxins, yet old enough to be imbued with a lifetime of accumulated emotional energy residue which is resident within the human body. Some abductees claim that certain reptilian factions have such complex biotechnologies that they are able to remove a human's soul energy matrix and place it in a containment box, and use the controlled body for whatever purpose they choose. Some abductees also insist that in some cases the reptiloids can create a clone duplicate of a person in a short amount of time through time warping and replace the soul energy matrix of a person back into the new cloned body if their disappearance from society would otherwise create too many problems. This way they can ingest the emotional residue-imbued original body without the abductee realizing, in most cases, that their soul memory matrix has been transferred to a cloned body, because they would have experienced a total soul matrix energy transfer and a suppression of any memories relating to the transfer process. The cloned bodies do not possess the integrated emotional residue that the vampire-realistic reptiloids apparently crave and find intoxicating in a similar manner as a human on Earth who is addicted to hard drugs. Branton. Unlike the Greys, they eat frequently and usually carry or send for food on their breaks. The ruling caste is secretive about their foods. They have created several dietary myths that they carefully embellish when the chance arrives. One of their favorite legends involves one of their ancestors' ability to eat an entire flock of geese in one setting. They rarely eat inside of any other species. They carefully choose their food, then carry their meal to their quarters. It was only when dignitaries arrive at the base did they join their meals. They enjoy the same foods we do, and they have been seen secretly munching on a freshly found snail. The human-looking replicants eat some cooked vegetables. They rely on vitamins and liquid protein for sustenance. If they have to eat on the surface world, they can eat whatever they are served, but as soon as possible they regurgitate. Their digestive systems frequently fail to process the food properly. The engineered beings have a special diet, created for their dietary needs. The mixture includes several organ foods blended with plasmatic fluids, amniotic liquids and parasitoplasm materials. These unique animals also enjoy occasional green plants, usually grasses or lettuce. The creatures that are designed to become warriors, eat protein-filled liquids. Q. In the Dulce papers, copper seems to be high on the importance list. In what methods is copper used? Answer. One of the main uses of copper at Dulce is containment of the magnetic flow. Magnets are used everywhere at that base. The infamous vats interiors are lined with copper, and the exterior walls are clad with stainless steel. The mechanical arm that stirs the liquid is made of a copper alloy. Other uses include dietary needs in a few of the transbiotic beings. There are several specially made cells or rooms built first with lead, then magnetic steel, then clad in copper. It is in those cells on the fourth level that contain living or essence. This essence is what you would call a captured disembodied soul or astral body. Note, this may tie in with the reports of certain remote viewing astral spies who claim to have projected into underground facilities like Dulce, New Mexico or Pine Gap, Australia, only to have close encounters with these astral containment fields, or have been captured by the same and released after being interrogated via super-sensitive electronic equipment. In one case, an Australian remote viewer was probing the Pine Gap facility where he also saw 3 other astral spies. The magnetic or astral body of one of these people had been captured by such a containment field, which really disturbed him. This man, Robert, also saw Greys and reptiloids operating in the deeper levels of Pine Gap, and also Nordic-type humans who were apparently captives and who did not seem to be very happy about being there. Branton, Q. Growing multi-species beings, blood formulas in human parts in vats sounds like a bad plot to a science fiction movie. The doctors and scientists of the world claim you can't mix the species. Note, naturally this may be true, however through genetic bioengineering and gene splicing this has apparently been accomplished to some extent. Branton. The concepts mentioned in the Dulce papers sounds far-fetched. Could you provide information that the average surface world reader could understand about similar things? Answer. The doctors and scientists on the surface world may say that, but underground, away from the prying eyes of ethics boards, they do grow transgenous beings. There is a lot of written material available at libraries. One of the best sources is an easy-to-read book published back in 1969, by Prentice Hall International, with the title of The Second Genesis, The Coming Control of Life, by Albert Rosenfeld. In this book, they discuss animals that may be especially bred to supply genetically reliable organs for people. And the use of fetal or embryonic material from which adult-sized organs and tissues may be grown. Also he discusses the fact that embryonic tissue has no immunological activity, therefore it cannot provoke the defense mechanism in the recipient. It will join the body not as a foreign antigen, but as a natural protein. He further discusses solitary generation, commonly called virgin birth, but also known as parthenogenesis. With one virgin birth in 1.6 million births average on the surface of the world, in Dulce that rate is reversed. Occasionally, a normally born human infant is born in the hospital wards on the 7th level. Parthenogenesis is the method used to grow type 2 beings. The now common transsexual surgery on the surface world began at the Dulce base. Men became women on a whim in the 7th level labs, and with the 4th level technology, The brainwashing resulted in the eager desire to become a woman, and that poor man, whether a willing or unwilling participant, firmly believes he always wanted to be a woman. No one could convince him to believe the truth. All things are twisted. A.T. Dulce. A quote by Dr. Ralph W. Gerard in the second Genesis put in his now classic statement, "There can be no twisted thought without a twisted molecule." Most have originated at Dulce. Q. How are the human workers stopped from telling everything about Dulce? Answer. Implants, fear threats to harm the families, control, also reprogramming with alpha, extremely low frequency, and drugs are the most common methods to encourage the workers not to divulge the location or daily routine. Q. A construction worker at the Ant Hill, the Northrop's Akapi base, reports seeing 10-12-foot-tall human-looking beings in lab coats. Who are these guys? Are they from the Hollow Earth? Note, the Hollow Earth theory is one that was postulated by various well-known individuals, including Marshall B. Gardner, Raymond Bernard, William Halley, discoverer of Halley's Comet, Edgar Allan Poe, Edgar Rice Burroughs, John Cleve Sims, John Urey Lloyd and others. Basically, the thesis involves what one might refer to as the geosyncovitic sphere theory, or that as the Earth was forming in its molten state, the planetary spin created a hollow or concavity within the center similar to the hollow created by the centrifugal force of a horizontal washing machine following a spin cycle. The theory, which has been postulated in parageological theories, in adventure novels, and in some cases even in alleged visits to the inner world, states that the shell of the Earth averages between 800–1,000 miles thick, with an interior surface consisting of oceans and land illuminated perpetually by a sphere of electromagnetic and/or nuclear energy suspended at the very center of the empty space. There are reputedly funnel-like openings near the polar regions, perpetually concealed by mist created by the collision of cold air from the outside and hot air from the inside, which permits ingress and egress to and from this inner world. The theory states that the inner surface has its own gravity, yet slightly less than the outer surface gravity. One side theory is that between the inner and outer surface, where gravity is nullified, there exists a layer of weightless or low-weight caverns in an eternal state of chaos where minerals, liquids, gases and chemicals continually slam together from the Earth's rotation, causing intense magmatic activity, a virtual inferno, or bottomless pit. Some have theorized that, based on the apocryphal Book of Esdras, chapter 13, which contains non-canonized Jewish legends, that the 10 lost tribes of Israel disappeared beyond the river Sambatyon and to a place in the far north where humans never lived before called Arzareth. In the last days, a path would be made through the ice and waters of the north and the lost tribes would return. There are 3 tribes accounted for as of this writing, or rather 2 tribes and 2 half-tribes, Judah, Benjamin, half of the Levite tribe, and apparently half of the tribe of Dan, if we are to believe the Ethiopian Jews who claim to be descended from Dan. The "13th" tribe would be accounted for by the fact that the 2 Josephite tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh are considered distinctive tribes in and of themselves. As for the giants, some believe that these have a direct connection to the 10–12-foot-tall Anakim people mentioned in the Old Testament who were driven out of Palestine, following which the Torah gives no further details as to their fate, although there have been many reports of such giants being encountered in large cavern systems below Alaska, Oregon, California, Utah, Texas and Mexico, and also reports of ancient grave sites in the western United States and elsewhere where the remains of human giants have reportedly been discovered. Most often they, like the fifth-dimensional Sasquatch people themselves, have been described as being benevolent, unless provoked. Brenton, they are probably inner Earth drones, workers. The deeper you get, the stranger the life forms. The tall men are from the subterranean levels. Lower yet are the dwarf deformed forms. I don't trust either of them. There are other forms, that both the tall men and the dwarfed men fear and loathe. They are similar to Bigfoot in appearance, but extremely violent and enjoy eating whatever they find while it is still alive. They are subhuman and demented, with an EQ around 15. Note, apparently, according to another source, these lower Bigfoot-type creatures, having more of a resemblance to apes than to the more human-like faces and features of the much friendlier Sasquatch people who frequent the surface, dwell in wild cavern systems some 6 or more miles deep, along with other very large and dangerous insectoid and quadruped or serpentine reptilian life forms reminiscent to something from out of a Hadean nightmare. This is according to a report I investigated some years ago of a group of spelonauts who reportedly broke into a vast underground labyrinth west and northwest of Cushman, Arkansas, where they encountered these types of creatures as well as friendly blue-skinned humans who claimed to be descended from a family that had survived an ancient global deluge by taking refuge within a large ship. These ancient people claimed that their ancestors had come to the Americas and discovered the cavern world, wherein they commenced to establish their hidden civilization. Branton. The reptiloid hominoid as opposed to quadruped or serpentine life forms stay in caves or caverns that aren't very deep. They prefer the desert mountains. They use camouflage rather than fighting, but they do carry drill rods for protection, flash guns. They do have a symbol, not the hokey snake with wings that I keep seeing in the public, which is used mostly by the Greys and also as a medical symbol for the Delta Force. Branton. The reptoids use a dragon with its tail in its mouth, a circle with 7 pointed stars in the middle. Q. There have been reports of the Delta Force having black vans with no tires that hover over the ground. How much are we, USA, already into working with alien cultures? Answer. I haven't seen the black vans you mentioned. We are totally submerged with alien cultures. Very little of the original human cultures have survived. Q. How can we, the public, go after, or expose an alien culture which is covered and hidden? Answer. Go for the best shot. That means go after the reptoid. They stay near the surface, they choose to try to hide and avoid contact. They are soldiers, doing a job, and usually there are 2 or 3 at each job site. They are manning a remote post. They are not to bother the humans unless they are endangering the post. Most of them are not hostile and won't kidnap you. They may blast you with a flash gun that may paralyze you. You won't remember the flash for an hour or 2 and cause confusion and mild fear. It could cause you to black out, pass out for a while. It is their way to escape and buy time to hide any visible equipment. If you know any areas with repeated reptilian sightings, then that is the place for you to look. They are fearsome to meet face to face, and their voices are harsh and whispery with heavy SS's, but most of them understand English and several other languages. Wear something with a reptile, not something violent, like St. George killing the dragon. Insight. If you see one, keep your hands open, palm forward, arms down. That is the non-aggression approach. Don't raise your arms, unless told to. Don't carry anything in your hands or arms. If he doesn't run, walk slowly towards him. Let him speak first. They consider humans repulsive and hostile and threatening with good reason. Don't try to offer him anything, don't touch him or anything of his. If he hisses at you, back up a couple feet, but don't look away. It simply means he finds you smelly. Don't try to overpower him, he is stronger than 10 or 12 men. Usually, if he hasn't run so far, he is curious and wants to talk to you. Fight your fear and your thoughts of panic. Q. How do we get closer to some kind of data to prove to others that there really is a danger from non-human beings? Answer. Good question. I'm afraid we will find the proof the hard way, when we are invaded. Try to keep a small camera with you at all times. When you search for reptoids, keep it in your pocket. Q. Is there a specific location where the public can set up their cameras and equipment to document an alien government base, and their activities? Answer. The problem is, most of the meetings are held in military bases or underground. The Groom Lake facility does fly several alien craft that regularly fly over unpopulated land that go back and forth from several bases. Southern California has several notable areas. 29 Palms, Lancaster or Chocolate Mountains are well known for such activities. Q. Could you provide us with a copy of your badge or card you used at Dulce? Answer. Badges or cards never leave the bases. All exits of bars are walls of metal. To open, to go out requires using the card. When you use it for an exit slot, the card won't come out. Each time you leave the base, you are issued a new card, with all the usual data about you, plus your weight added, corrected daily. There are several mines in the Chocolate MTS that open into a base highway, but be aware that they are patrolled regularly and there are cameras there. Q. There are so many types of really far-out aliens seen in TV, movies, magazines and popular fiction. Is there one type of a fictional unknown race, in your opinion, that fits the term alien? Answer. Yes. There are 2, an alien that is totally indescribable, and another would be a pseudo-alien. Q. What are the dimensions of the Dulce facility? There are 1,700 paved miles of roads under Dulce and northern New Mexico. Towards Los Alamos is another 800 miles of tunnels. The base is still growing due west. Q. What is the top depth? Answer. The first level starts 200 feet from the surface. Each level has a ceiling of 7 feet, except levels 6 and 7, the ceiling there is 45 and 60 feet. There are approximately 45 feet or more between each level. The average highway ceiling is 25 feet. The hub at the base is 3,000 feet wide. Use a 7.5 minute scale map to try to comprehend the size of the place. Q. Are there regular vehicle exits that can be observed from the ground? Answer. Yes, but they are inside Los Alamos. Q. Are there aerial exits that can be observed? Answer. 20 miles due north of Dulce, across the border into southern Colorado. Branton is a large hangar. It is hidden by a facade of cliffs. Look for an isolated short road on the top of a mesa, with no road to or from the top. Q. Are the ventilation shafts visible? Answer. The ventilation shafts are hidden by bushes or vents inside caves. There are 5 on the top of the mesa. Be aware there are cameras inside most of the vents. Q. Is there external security, and could we recognize them in or around the town itself? Answer. There's minimal security on the surface. Most of the men and women are Air Force or highway crew men. There used to be a Best Western motel that hosts or hires a lot of base workers from Level 1. I don't know if that motel is still operational. Most of the security force live in Santa Fe. Others live at White Pine, Los Alamos. Q. Are there security sensors? What type? If so, what is their power source? Answer. Yes, there are many types of sensors: radar, infrared, heat sensors, microwave, EMG, and satellite. Most of the sensors are powered by magnetic power. The only thing you may notice on the surface would be an occasional satellite dish. Q. If you can, give us some information on the upcoming war with the aliens. When does it start? Do you recommend going underground? Answer. The war has already begun. To start, they use weather control devices that can cripple a city in hours. Storms, flood and drought, with those few things they can bring any country to their knees in a hurry. Yes, I do recommend going underground. Choose a location that has a higher elevation than the surrounding terrain. Pick out a cave or even an abandoned mining shaft or two. Bury a cache of supplies, including food and water. Near these locations, place the supplies in heavy plastic boxes that have tight lids to prevent the destruction by earth-burrowing rodents and insects. Then plan to live like a squatter when it becomes necessary. If you own land, create a system of tunnels and tell no one. Use your tunnels to secrete your supplies, and plan to live in those corridors when you must. Q. What about the reptilian ships that are in orbit around the equator? Are they cloaked? Note, presumably including the original 2 planetoids that arrived in geosynchronous orbits around Earth at 400 and 600 miles up in 1953. This reportedly led to an NSA project which successfully communicated with the gray aliens and resulted in a contact landing treaty scenario involving President Eisenhower and other executive military-industrial officials at Muroc/Edwards/Holloman Air Force bases in 1954. Branton. Answer. They are not cloaked the way you may think. It's more like nobody is learning to see, even though it is in plain sight. Like the mailman becomes invisible because you are so used to seeing him you never noticed he is alive. One of the favorite methods of covert activities is to hide their operation in such an obvious way or place that no one would suspect it is covert. Note, for instance, hiding entrances to underground bases beneath religious shrines, federal buildings, mining works, malls, libraries, lodges, hotels are basically areas that one would consider the least likely places to hide or accommodate an entrance to an underground facility. The Underground New World Order (FEMA) facilities throughout the United States apparently utilize this type of concealment with many of their bases. Branton. Q. What are the Greys susceptible to? Answer. The Greys are photosensitive. Any bright light hurts their eyes. They avoid sunlight and travel at night. Camera flashes causes them to back up. It could be used as a weapon against them, but they recover quickly. It could buy enough time to escape. Use commands, or nonsensical words in the form of commands and they will back up. Their brain is more logical than ours and they do not create fun. They do not understand poetry either. What really confuses them is saying things in pig Latin. We learned it in a hurry, and used it against them, the Greys, in the Dulce Wars. Q. Can Greys read your intentions if you came up behind one? Answer. Yes. They read your intent, because they use your body's frequency. The human race broadcasts a frequency, that they recognize as an electromagnetic impulse. Each person has a slightly different frequency. That difference is what we call personality. When a human thinks, they broadcast strong impulses. In the case of fear, the frequency is loud and easy to recognize. By the same right, a calm and composed mindset should be far more difficult to recognize. Branton. Q. Can we shield ourselves against their mental control? Answer. We can shield ourselves against them, however 95% of the human race never try to control their thoughts, and controlling our own thoughts is the best weapon. The average person rarely thinks in a clear pattern. That allows the brain to think in a chaotic way. Control your thoughts, and you can stop the aliens attempting to abduct and control you. Controlling my own thoughts have kept me alive for years. Q. Could you shed some light on the type of human the aliens are looking for when they abduct? Answer. I can tell you that the most common are petite women in their early 20s or early 30s, dark-haired boys between 5 to 9, small to medium-sized men in their mid-20s to mid-40s. But, let me stress that there are all types of people being held against their will in the Dulce base. There are tall heavy men and women, teenagers, elderly folks and very young girls in the cages and the vats. I only mentioned the most common age size are the small young men and petite women. The boys are favored because at that age their bodies are rapidly growing, and their atomic material is adaptable in the transfer chamber. The young small women are frequently very fertile. The men are used for sperm. I have no idea why they prefer small to average size men. Q. Did you ever see twins or triplets, etc.? Answer. Since you mentioned it, no. It never crossed my mind to search for them. But then that doesn't mean they aren't there. There is no way I could have seen everybody at that huge complex. Q. What is the prevalent human race at the Dulce base? I am curious about both the human workers and the inmates. Answer. The human workforce is made of people from every nation on the surface world. The one thing they share is that they all speak English. If you were asking if there are white, black, red, yellow and brown skin color, again I'll have to say that there is no prevalent race there. As for inmates, I could see our races there. From what I could see, it looked like there were more white people, but again, I saw a constant flow of different people. Many, I think, were only there for a few hours. Q. Please explain the method they use to identify each inmate. Answer. No one has a name. When first brought to this facility, they were issued one large number. Usually that code has a mixture of numbers and letters. They show the place, how, and by who, followed by the time, age, sex and finally the personal number, their SS number. For example, it might look like this: NVLV00000000000000000000Q. With that huge facility, trash and garbage must be a real problem. How do they dispose it? Answer. It was never a problem. Some of it is reformed or melted down then remade. Some of the wet garbage is eaten by bacterial forms, and what's left is vaporized in a vat-like chamber. The residue of that action, it takes them months to get enough to measure, is used in a complex lye and used to fertilize crops. Q. Where's your family? Not just your wife and son, but parents and siblings? Answer. Kathy and Eric are still missing. My parents died in a car crash when I was in my teens. I have one brother. If he is alive, I suspect he's inside an underground base somewhere. I haven't heard from him for several years. Please pray for them, please. Q. What is your birth date, and where were you born? Answer. The 23rd of April 1941, Glen Ellen, Illinois, actually in a farm at home. In the place now called Glen Ellen. My birth certificate list is at Wheaton, Illinois. Q. You have been through so much, and yet keep fighting. What is your biggest fear? Answer. That the general public will forget the trapped innocent people in the despicable place, and will ignore the hundreds of children, women and men added to that place every month. Chapter 12. Operation Retaliation, Paul Bennewitz. One Man Against an Empire. Following are quotations from a document, actually a detailed report, called Project Beta, which was compiled by scientist Paul Bennewitz for officials at Kirtland F, who were working with Bennewitz in an operational plan to bring down the alien base at Dulce, New Mexico. That was until other interests deep within the intelligence community got involved and brought enormous pressures against Bennewitz and various Kirtland F officials. Colonel Edwards, FOC agent Richard Doty, the wing commander and others who were involved, to cease the investigation. Although Paul has apparently been silenced, the discoveries, which he has made in regards to the physical technological aspects of activity taking place in and around Dulce cannot be silenced. Project Beta is apparently a proposed plan for a physical military attack on one of the major key basing installations of the Draconis-Orion reticuli forces, and may be useful in any future attempts to retake the base from alien or alien-controlled elements, and to set free the human captives who are apparently being held in cold storage or in subterranean prisons deep below the surface of the American Southwest and beyond. Before dealing with the report itself, we will quote some correspondence between Bennewitz and others, beginning with excerpts from Paul's March 1986 letter to Clifford Stone, now Director of UFO Contact International in Albuquerque. Dear Clifford, there is so much in this and so much has happened upon a near daily basis to me for 7 years that I don't know where to start first. I think probably the best approach is to start out with some explanation in the way of statements relative to alien cultures here on Earth, their social structures, physical makeup, etc., all of which has been gleaned from the direct communications by computer, visual observation, psychological evaluation, and personal interaction. First, there are the low, high and very high cultural levels. In the low levels of the culture there are sharply defined levels, which extend from slave level on up. There is no freedom there, no one crosses these lines within, cross it and you are dead. Everything is watched with optical equipment and monitored by computers and individuals called keepers. Spheres of many sizes float throughout their environment, monitoring audio, visual and thought frequencies. These have also been observed by workers in underground facilities reaching miles below Edwards Air Force Base and the Tehachapi Mountains of California. Branton. These units, which have a highly mirrored finish, can be talked to. They can cloak themselves so that they are totally invisible. Their control signal can be broken down into varying M and FM components. There is no trust in this type of society. Everything is watched and monitored. The command structure is near totally unbelievable. The ruling levels wear robes of appropriate colors. The alien government involved with this group is totalitarian. They appear not to observe social and moral principles. Their credo appears to be total control or kill. In the north, at the river, the orange insignia, or at the diamond as the alien calls the base. The method of rule is a monarchy. The king wears purple. The high colors of social level wear green, yellow, and white. The lower levels wore brown. Their body metabolism is very high, estimated at 110 to 115 degrees. Elimination is through osmosis. Skin color of the ruling echelon varies from a jaundiced yellow to white. No hair of any kind. The arms are long, near to knee level. They have very long hands and fingers. All of them look underfed. They have big heads and eyes. The humanoid types are generally light green. When in need of formula or dead they turn gray. Many in this culture walk with a limp or shuffle their feet. There is a council in the north called the Nine. All of them seem to be cut from the same pattern. All appear to be highly vindictive and ego-oriented. Their god is called Ta. And in a letter to Clifford Stone dated March 19, 1986, Bennewitz writes, "It would appear that the Greys in the north are near frantic about my communications and want to stop me from talking." Elsewhere Bennewitz implied it was more of an interrogation. Branton with IO via the computer. This morning I have a dark red streak down the left side of my face about 2 3/4 inches long and 1/4 inch wide. Based on experience, I would guess it was done by one of those mirrored spheres in the bedroom last night. This is typical of their distorted sense of logic. They operate on fear. But their problem is that I don't fear them. All they have achieved with me is that I totally ignore them. It would appear that they are deathly afraid of the beings called Io and Joe. See high culture further below. You will find, if you have not already, that constant interaction will result in learning how to be aware of, and in turn use, alien logic. It is because they operate in fear and do not understand the concepts of friendship and trust that they operate a society where everyone and everything is watched. Now, if you look at those in the North, Colorado, Branton, pragmatically, they have achieved the ideal in terms of war machines and weapons. With their machines and weapons they are brave. In their minds, without them they are just a quivering mass of fear. Note, I can also confirm Bennewitz's observations here, however I would also add that in addition to their technology, especially their mind control technology, and this relates to the following. Once one breaks through the complex matrix of lies that the reptilian Grey Collective projects, then they are found out to be nothing more than quivering worms beneath the shell, as Benuits implies. In fact, the only power that these soulless vermin, the hybrids and non-collectivist reptiloids not included in this flaming, have over us is their complex deceptions and our reciprocating and capitulating fears. Why am I so confident to judge the Greys and their collective in this manner? Because I myself had fallen for their lies many times before I discovered what they were really all about. As an example, the collectivist reptiloids denoids Greys would have us to believe that they genetically created us and put us on planet Earth. In response, we, especially those pathetic human agents who collaborate with them, tend to cower in absolute fear before or slash their supposed creators and try to appease them since, after all, resistance is futile. In appeasing them, we give our power to them. We in essence then create a force which is superior to us. Brenton, to further enhance their bravery, they seek full control with the implant. The relative effectiveness of some of these implants seems to be inversely proportional to expanded memory and awareness level. They also know that they can control large masses of people with lower intelligence without implants, shotgun manipulation with the beams. With that beam they can and do create mass unrest. The high culture aliens known as the Yaku, the high is apparently the culture of Io and Joe. They do exhibit kindness, empathy, and extreme intelligence and transmissions through the computer. Then how, one might ask, can they operate such a death-fear control-oriented system which has committed untold atrocities and violations against human abductees? Are the Yaku only feigning their benevolence? Brenton. Io's group culture is the Homo sapiens humanoid variety. Based upon the input from Joe, his hair is brown and the female Io has red hair. Red-haired individuals claiming to be star travelers have shown up here in Albuquerque on the ground. They did give indication that bodies of their group are here in Albuquerque in cryogenic containers. The location is tentatively the FA complex north of Albuquerque. It is a fenced and guarded highly secure area. They indicated through the computer that 8 of the Yaku were shot by the United States government and 11 bodies were the result of crashes. Note, the Yaku are not what are normally known as Greys, or at least the ones that directly interact in human abductions. There are more bodies in storage. I don't know where they all are. I knew the bodies had been moved from Maryland and are presently under the United States Navy jurisdiction. Yesterday, the computer indicated a total of 40 bodies had been moved. Editor note, at last count there were more than 135 bodies in government hands, of various descriptions. Some humans, Greys, reptilians, etc. Valvalerian. I was shown a color photograph by Richard Doty 2 years or more ago of a purported alien life form held prisoner. Supposedly it was taken at Los Alamos. He was alive, a light green color, big eyes, standing directly in front of the camera. So far I know very little about the high except for what I have experienced. They are Homo sapiens, and I would guess that they are the same that accidentally zapped Travis Walton. If the numbers are correct out of the computer they number over 5,000. The other group is, I believe, equivalent in number. Indications seem to be that they are operating from a starship in far orbit around the Earth. The culture has apparent social values and emotionalism. They seem to display kindness and concern for individuals. Then again we must ask, why are they considered the leaders of aliens which show little if any concern for individuals? Branton. Their technology is superior to ours and also to the Greys based in the North, who are trying to play God with badly distorted logic. The Vrihai are very few in number. Their entire structure of knowledge and social interaction is so far advanced that it is near impossible for me to relate to. Again, much of this is based on personal experience of which I have never talked with anyone about. In fact, you were the first. I would guess that these Vrihai are quite old. 1,000 years is not apparently unrealistic. I would guess that there are a few of them on the starship used by the High, and that they are preserved and cared for by those on the ship. For over 300 years, a conflict has been going on between the Greys, who are basically warlike and aggressive, and the higher factions in the infrastructure. Note, Benuits does not explain the apparent dichotomy of how compassionate humanoids and malevolent reptiloids who are at war with each other could be part of the same infrastructure. Perhaps both the Greys and the humanoids utilize the same collective mind network and therefore are intricately tied in with the other whether they like it or not. This would make the high and very high leaders in something equivalent to the Ashtar collective. Branton. Project Beta. With suggestions and guidelines. Investigator, physicist, Paul F. Benowitz. The following are key mileposts established or discovered during the continuing scientific study concerning alien intervention and the result. Study limited solely to New Mexico. 1. 2 years continuous recorded electronic surveillance and tracking with DF 24-hour/day data of alien ships within 60 miles radius of Albuquerque, plus 6,000 feet motion picture of same, daylight and night. 2. Detection and disassembly of alien communication and video channels, both local, Earth, and near space. 3. Constant reception of video from alien ship and underground base view screen. Typical alien, humanoid and at times apparent Homo sapiens. 4. A case history of an encounter victim in New Mexico, which lead to the communication link and discovery that apparently all encounter victims have deliberate alien implants along with obvious accompanying scars. The victim's implants were verified by X-ray and CAT scan. 5 other scar cases were also verified. 5. Established constant direct communications with the alien using a computer in a form of hexadecimal code with graphics and printout. This communication was instigated apparently after the United States base was vacated following the United States intelligence's apparent loss of the Dulce Wars. Branton. 6. Through the alien communication loop, the true underground base location was divulged by the alien and precisely pinpointed. 7. Subsequent aerial and ground photographs revealed landing pylons, ships on the ground, entrances, beam weapons and apparent launch ports, along with aliens on the ground and electrostatically supported vehicles. Charging beam weapons also apparently electrostatic. 8. Cross-correlation and matching by triangulation, etc. To official NASA Circle color infrared high-resolution films confirmed base locations and resulted in revealing the United States military involvement yielding precise coordinates and the United States base layout. 9. Prior alien communication had indicated military involvement and the fact that the USAF had a ship, but due to studied alien psychology this was ignored at the time. 10. Subsequently, the alien communicated following verification with the Circle that there was indeed a ship. Actually more than one, that 2 were wrecked and left behind and another built. This ship is atomic powered and flying. The alien indicated its basing location. 11. It was learned as stated that 2 women and a boy near Austin, Texas were exposed to severe radiation at close range and the ship was last seen going west with helicopters. In addition, the United States government was quietly picking up the medical expenses. 12. Subsequent inspection of motion picture photographs taken during the study revealed the United States ship or one like it flying with the aliens. These match the Circle where 2 can be seen on the ground and in the later photographs taken on the ground after the base was abandoned. So in very brief form the prologue to learning within reasonable accuracy what transpired prior to the end of 1979 or shortly thereafter. The computer communications and constant interaction with the alien in this manner without direct encounter has given a reasonably clear picture of the alien psychology, their logic and logic methods and their prime intent. It is important to note at the outset, the alien is devious, employs deception, has no intent of any apparent peacemaking process and obviously does not adhere to any prior arranged agreement. In truth they tend to lie, however their memory for lying is not long and direct comparative computer printout analysis reveals this fact. Therefore much drops through the crack, so to speak. And from this comes the apparent truth. It is not the intent of this report to criticize or point fingers. Obviously whoever made the initial agreement was operating upon our basis of logic and not that of the alien, and in so doing apparently walked innocently, in time, into a trap. The alien indicated that the Greys, apparently the group initially involved in the agreement, were still upset about the initial capture and subsequent death of the first 8 of their co-fellows. Another group, calling themselves in the computer language, the Orange, their base is on the west slope of Mount Archuleta, directly west of the south end of the United States base and near NW of the apparent main landing area they call, in the computer language, the Diamond. This, because from a distance, it looks diamond-shaped in the photographs when looking somewhat southwest past the observation tower toward the ridged peak SE of Mount Archuleta. This ridged peak has no name, I call it South Peak. The base extends north of this peak to the edge of the cliff down, which goes a road past the large alloy dome 38 foot across the bottom and with a 20 foot hole in the top. Based upon some of the aerial photographs during which the alien was caught in the open and launching, some launches appear to be coming from the direction of the dome. I would guess it is an underground launch egress facility. In the NASA circle there is what appears to be a black limousine alongside the dome on the ramp. Surprisingly, it is precisely the size of my '79 Lincoln Town Car. Wheeled vehicles in what appear to be snowcats or caterpillars can be seen throughout the circle, car and truck tracks, trucks and jeeps. I don't believe aliens have wheels, humans do. Numerous roadblocks extend northward through the United States base along a well-maintained road 30-some-odd feet wide, apparently gravel, near all weather. Numerous turnarounds and wheel tracks into launch preparation areas with the ships. Pads marked with 26-foot excess and servicing facilities, tanks, etc. 2 domed polygon high-voltage buildings on the east side of the road, also an apparent foundation for another helipad, test stands, human housing, water tank 32-foot across, and at one of the main road blocks, 2 large vehicles parked across the road. Also at that point another apparent black limousine with tracks leading to it, and to the west of the road. All tracks and vehicles have been dimensioned and match military vehicles. If I were to make a guess, I would estimate the likelihood that the apparent black limousines are CIA. This is but a limited inventory of what was there on September 8, 1978, included only as evidential matter for your perusal and confirmation. The road, which incidentally the natives, the tribal chief, reservation police and highway patrolmen know nothing about, comes in off of a trail from the north. Starting at the trail, line of sight to the large plateau area and the alloy dome, the road, in the middle of nowhere on the Jicarilla Reservation, is precisely 12,888 feet long airline distance. The total alien basing area, which apparently contains several cultures now all under the designation Unity in the computer language, is approximately 3 kilometers wide by 8 kilometers long, multi-leveled. A conservative guess based upon the number of ships presently over this area and the number on the ground in the circle photographs, the total alien population at this point is at least 2,000 and most likely more. The alien indicates more are coming or on the way. I won't attempt to speculate in this report as to how the initial United States contact was made, what transpired, nor how many were able to escape. The alien has communicated his account, and if totally true, it certainly is not palatable. Much detail has been omitted for future discussion if desired, however the import is this. Constant computer communication, full online in February of this year, manual prior to that, conditions of morale and a total insight into what makes the alien run. This is very valuable data. 1. Most importantly, the alien will allow no one to go without an implant, and after knowledge of it is wiped out. They simply will not allow it. All indications are that communication or language cannot result without the implant, with the exception of the binary and the computer. This would indicate a possible immediate threat or danger for anyone, military, Air Force, or otherwise that has been at the base. They will not remember the implant in any case, the contactee here included. The reason for the implant is multiple for both language or communication by thought. There's no apparent language barrier with thought, and also complete absolute control by the alien through a program, by their beam or direct contact. I have tested this and found that during this programming the person then has no memory of the act/conversation afterward. If this has happened to the military, I need not elaborate as the possible consequences. The victim's switch can be pulled at any time, and at the same time they are walking cameras and microphones if the alien chooses to listen in with the use of their beams. No classified area of any endeavor in the United States is inviolate under these conditions. However, realize, the scars, barely visible, can be seen, all are exactly located and all are accessible by X-ray. 2. Also note that all of the aliens, humanoid-like, all must have implants. Without them, no direct communication is apparently possible. So one can most generally arbitrarily say that if a person states he/she communicated by thought with an alien, he/she most likely has been implanted. They may also claim to be overly psychic and be able to prove this, again through the link transplant. He/she is given the information by the alien and does not realize. 3. Most importantly, the alien, either through evolvement or because the humanoid is made, will exhibit tendencies for bad logic, bad by Earth logic comparison. So they are not infallible. In point of fact they appear to have many more frailties and weaknesses than the normal Homo sapiens, which they attempt to compensate for through their technology. Branton. To the alien, The mind is key, and therein lies a great weakness which will be discussed later. 4. They are not to be trusted. It is suspected if one was considered a friend, and if one were to call upon that friend in time of dire physical threat, the friend would quickly side with the other side. The computer indicates in comparison that no known Earth protagonist, Russian or otherwise, exhibit these tendencies to any major degree, indicating the danger involved in making any kind of agreement with these aliens, at least of this species. 5. The alien does kill with the beam generally. Results on a human will exhibit a 3 to 4 centimeter purple circle. If done from the rear, on one or both shoulders. The results on cattle are the same, essentially exhibiting purple beneath the hide, with burned circles on the outside. 6. Cattle mutilations are the other side of the coin and will not be delved into here, although they are part of the overall. It appears the humanoids are fed by a formula made from human or cattle material, or both, and they are made from the same material by gene splicing and the use of female encounter victims of them. The resultant embryos are referred to by the alien as an organ. Time of gestation to full use as a utility, ready to work, appears to be about 1 year. A year in alien time, I do not know. Solution: I doubt there is an immediate total cure per se. However, they must be stopped, and we have to get off dead center before we find time has run out. They are picking up and cutting, as the alien calls it, many people every night. Each implanted individual is apparently ready for the pull of their switch. Whether all implants are totally effective I cannot predict, but conservatively I would estimate at least 300,000 or more in the United States, and at least 2 million if not more worldwide. Weaponry and inherent weaknesses. Weaponry is one of the keys, and in the alien's present state we can prepare an effective offense. One tends at the outset, I did, to look at their machines and say, there's no defense or offense. One is overwhelmed by their speed, apparent capability of invisibility and cloaking, and other covert capabilities not discussed at this time. In particular, the beam weapons are themselves a direct threat, and obviously one that must be seriously considered but not overly so. Let us first look at just what this weapon is. It is an electrostatic weapon with plasma-generating voltages, and an internal storage device. It is pulse-powered. The beam, totally effective in atmosphere, can be loaded with hydrogen or oxygen. Range? Average, ground weapons, maximum 2 kilometers if it is dry, capable of sustaining just so many full-power discharges. Slow leakage occurs continuously, therefore, they must be recharged periodically. If it is raining the weapon becomes ineffective and is swamped, thus discharged. This should be considered in any future potential offensive strike against the base. Branton. The range is near totally lost at that point. On the discs and saucers, the weapon is generally on the left side or top center and has a maximum range of 200 meters, at which point it will plow a trench in desert soil. When fired, it fires both to the front and to the back equally. Reason? Because of their mode and methods of flight. If equilibrium is not maintained, the saucer will spin out. Hand weapons? Estimate based upon visible damage observed, not too much velocity nor staying power, but at short range, deadly, less than 45 cal automatic. Note, this may explain the late Phil Schneider's claim that at close range the radiation beam weapons of the aliens he encountered beneath Dulce were deadly, however at long range less so. Although at long range the beam weapons are capable of inducing severe radiation damage. Branton. At 1 meter range, estimated beam temperature 1600 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. It can vaporize metal. Apparently the discs and weapons operate from a storage source. In time, without periodic recharge, this source is depleted. The design they traded to us was at least 30 years old, employing an atomic source. Possibly they may still have some, it would appear so. Their staying power is obviously much longer. Aircraft helicopter vulnerability. Any of our aircraft, helicopters, missiles or any air flight vehicle can be taken down instantly with no use of weaponry. The aliens simply need do no more than make one invisible pass, and their bow wave or screen or both will take the airlift vehicle down. The pilot obviously will not even know what hit him. Note, perhaps stealth-type fighters equipped with electromagnetic force shields may be more effective in this regard. Also, advanced infrared scanners may be used to detect cloaked alien ships before they have a chance to attack. Branton. For humans on the ground, the alien can use weaponry or a bow wave. The partial pressure envelope can hit with the power of a tornado. Shock rise time and G-force is instantaneous. However, they dare not hit the craft physically because they are fragile and in fact, under slow flying conditions within our atmosphere, hold a very tenuous position. Without power, the balance or equilibrium, they lose it. In brief, these are apparent capabilities observed and gleaned through the computer communication and observation. You may note these, however, they are directly related to the last and final portion of this report. What can be done? 1. Because of the aliens' apparent logic system, they appear to be logic-controlled. A key decision cannot be made without higher clearance. All are under the control of what they call the Keeper. Yet it would appear this is not the final say. Therefore, dependent upon urgency, delays of as long as 12 to 15 hours can occur for a decision. How short/long this time frame under battle conditions may be, I do not know. Because of this apparent control, individual instantaneous decision-making by the alien is limited. If the plan goes even slightly out of balance or context, they become confused. Faced with this, possibly, the humanoids would be the first to break and run. The same applies to their mission master plan, if one can call it that. If pushed out of context, it will come apart, they will be exposed to the world, so they will possibly run before they fight in the open. They definitely do not want that to happen. Psychologically, at present, their morale is down, near disintegration. There is pronounced dissension in the ranks. Even with the humanoids. Communication can encourage this, not a necessity to expound upon this other than to say because of their own internal vulnerability mind-wise to each other, therein lies a prime weakness. Inter-echelon or individual trust appears to be totally lacking, so suspicion of each other is rampant. They are highly segregated as to levels. A low dare not conflict with a medium or high, or it literally means death. Death being, to the humanoid, deprogramming or, in the end perhaps total physical death. They appear to be totally death-oriented and because of this, absolutely death-fear-oriented. This is a psychological advantage. The computer also gives indications of a real possibility of adverse or ground programming. 2. Consider their ships, most if not all run on charge. The source depletes and so dependent upon size, depletion can occur from some within a week or less. Ships can replenish each other but only up to charge balance. This is done with antennae-like extensions and the charge is distributed observing conservation of energy laws. They can replenish from power lines, but again only to a point, so time of flight is limited. Deprived of their base recharge capability, it is indicated that all ships will come down within 6 months to a year unless they can get transported out, that is back to the prime launch ship. The discs and saucers in general cannot fly in space because of their mode of flight, that is unless they are within an interplanetary or interstellar launch or carrier vessel, Branton. Therefore, deprived of home base, it is not likely they can survive. Their capability in power survival outlasts their capability in food or formula survival. If they do not get the formula/food within a certain period of time, they will weaken and die. In the case of Mount Archuleta and South Peak, they are dependent upon the Navajo River for water supply, and water to them is totally life. Without water they have no power. Without power, no oxygen or hydrogen to service the ships and weapons. No water to sustain the organs and feeding formula. Note, we should also take into account the possibility of subterranean water sources. Also, if the base can be weakened by shutting off the supply line of water, the formula, and so on, it might be wise for the sake of the humanoid prisoners below not to wait until the base is too weak, otherwise this might endanger these humans captives. We suggest that in addition to the strategies that Benoist gives in this document, an all-out underground invasion force should also be considered, similar to the tunnel rats of the Vietnam War, a force that is prepared to enter the base when it is at a specific weak point, and make strategic or surgical kills of enemy forces while still considering the human and hybrid captives. A multi-leveled operation utilizing surprise, confusion and intimidation to their fullest potential should be considered. And the sooner the better, considering the continuous infiltration and sabotage of all levels of our society. Branton. Simple? Not really. However, there is a water intake and there is a dam upstream that can be totally cut off and the water rerouted to Tacoma, New Mexico. Should this occur, at least 3 of the internal bases will go down. They could possibly go atomic periodically, but obviously problems without cooling. Once the bases are pressed on a large scale, all discs and saucers will go airborne immediately. Troops on the ground can gain terrain cover to quite a degree. It is rough terrain. 3. Our need is for a weapon, workable and preferably not like the aliens. I believe unless the alien is caught unawares with their screen up, their weapons are equal, so they are like children pillow boxing, there can be no result. The weapon must penetrate their screen, and IT must also penetrate the ground. I believe I have that weapon. Note, was this suggestion of Benoit's for a ground-penetrating device, the original inspiration for the Los Alamos Excalibur weapon, a nuclear device which was designed to rapidly drill a hole through the earth and destroy aliens in their underground bases? Branton. 2 small prototypes have been funded and constructed by my company. Tests conducted to date indicate they do work and work rather well considering their small size. Because of this weapon's present status and proprietary nature, a basic patent is in process. The theory will not be explained here. However, the weapon appears to do 2 things at very low power. The discs within its range begin to discharge when exposed to the weapon beam. To counteract, they must apply more power, and in so doing consume power. Again, conservation of energy laws strictly apply. Note, Wilhelm Reich, whose research has been suppressed by certain interests, gained some level of success with a beam weapon of this type. Reich was able to discharge the energy of UFO craft that had appeared over his research facility, alien craft that were apparently curious of his work in regards to his organ energy-powered cloudbuster experiments. Branton, this effect can be observed on the detection instruments as they back away in response to slow discharge. Discharge, AT low power is slow, but AT high power in the final sophisticated weapon, the rate can be increased by many orders of magnitude. Most importantly, this weapon can penetrate the screen, hull alloy, everything. They cannot shield it in any way. Lastly, because of the implants, the weapon's beam gets to them mentally. They lose judgment and indicate almost immediate confusion, particularly the humanoids. That is, the electromagnetic crystalline implants that link the aliens together into a collective mind or group intelligence. Branton. It is believed at this early stage, based upon present testing, that the weapon when full on and full size will kill and bring down discs at substantial range. The alien weapons operate substantially the same as their discs using a charge source and charge distribution. So, in the same sense it is indicated that this weapon design will pull their charge weapons down very rapidly. The range of my weapon exceeds that of their present weapons, and in its most sophisticated form can be readily computer controlled to allow extremely rapid tracking and lock-on regardless of speed, along with electronic wobulation of the beam. IT is a beam weapon, and even at this early stage of miniature prototype testing and development, it indicates eventual superiority to their weapons. 4. Initial logistics would indicate a plan sequentially implemented as follows. This plan does not include all requirements and preparatory safety measures to be employed by ground forces. However, if Air Force intelligence desires to pursue the approaches suggested in this report, each significant requirement will be discussed in depth. An attack must be directed near entirety on the ground for obvious reasons. One would, if familiar with the alien capability, indicate that vehicle ignition problems will be encountered. This is precisely true. However, the reason for this is not mysterious, but is based upon good solid laws of physics and are known. From experience gained through my study, it is now known how to prevent this from happening and will be discussed in detail at some later date. All electrical and electronic equipment must be hardened using these specific techniques prior to implementation. Because of the known capability of the alien, by use of scanning beams to know in advance details of planning, only the initial outline is presented in this report. Again, through the communicative interaction, computer-linked interrogation, Branton with the alien, testing has simultaneously been done upon this facet, that is eavesdropping, and ways to abort this capability have been tested and proven. The program would be instigated in phases. The first phase, planning and logistics, would include continued implementation and testing of the final weapon prototype through the pre-production stage. Production of at least 50 minimum quality should be planned. Additional backup spares should also be included. On a full-time shift basis, it is estimated that at least 1 year or less would be required to arrive at the pre-production stage. A team would be organized by Thunder Scientific to accomplish this. The key work is now and would be done by an associated company, Benoit's Labs. Limited, specific attack phases would be incorporated. 1. The first procedure would be to close the gates of the dam above the Navajo River. This dam would be held closed for the duration. Internal to the one cave, there is a small dam for water storage. Its capacity is small. There is also a discharge outlet downstream that could be closed, causing wastewater to back up into the caves. The water is vacuum pumped apparently by some electrostatic means from the river. At close range, the weapon will take out this capability. 2. Once deprived totally of water for a minimum period of 4 weeks, conditions in the alien bases under discussion will have badly deteriorated. Psychological shock is extremely effective with the alien. Total advantage can be taken by instantaneous action or planned observable deviation from the norm. At least 3 bases will go down. 3. If they follow their normal strategic pattern as when pressed previously, they will launch most if not all ships. 4. Prior to the implementation of water deprivation, the weapons should be deployed at strategic hardened locations and activated in a certain pre-planned manner determined by final weapon coordinate locations. 5. This will put an immediate power drain upon those airborne and the alien weapons ringing their bases. 6. Because of the inherent psychological aspect of the alien, Benuits probably refers to the alien in a singular sense because of the collective hive mind nature of the reptilian greys. Branton, much can be done in the open with no attempt to preserve secrecy. Much of what is done can be of a diversionary nature. Under most circumstances they will attempt to harass but will not openly attack. Note, from my own personal experience and research, the Greys and other members of the Draconian Hive are more dependent on mental or psychological warfare than on material warfare, although they have used physical weaponry in the past when pushed into a corner, as in airborne assaults between their craft and ours or ground assaults against their underground strongholds, as the Dulce and Grum wars themselves have established. Being logic-based, they would prefer to take control of a target planet by way of psychological infiltration without risking the loss of machinery and personnel that would result from an attempted overt or physical invasion. An alien race would have to be extraordinarily overconfident of their own superiority to undertake an all-out attack like that depicted in the motion picture Independence Day. As has reportedly been the case with other targeted planets, the reptiloids/greys hold back a physical attack until they have succeeded in infiltrating the targeted planetary culture via Trojan horse-type interactions with some of the more self-serving elements of that planet's culture. In the case of planet Earth, the Nazified CIA and NSA agencies were chosen. These collaborators, and in many or most cases alien infiltrators, clones, cyborgs or implantees working within these agencies, in turn set the inhabitants of the targeted planet against each other so as to bring about world depopulation, to the point where resistance to the invasional attack would be minimal. The aliens usually seek out those eco-political cult leaders who would be willing to sell out their own world to the alien agenda in exchange for promises of alien assistance in implementing a so-called joint operational dictatorship, one in which their own respective power cults would supposedly be the favored power structure once the planet is assimilated and annexed to the alien empire. However, if we are to consider the historical trends of the alien collectivists, they may only favor this cult until it has served its purpose. Following the establishment of the alien agenda, these power cultists might at best be totally mind-controlled and at worst be eliminated, in that the alien has no sense of honor or loyalty to those with whom they have established agreements. They only have their agenda and they will justify any course of action that best serves to bring about that agenda. The human cultists would become so preoccupied about establishing their own planetary empire, that they would blind themselves to the fact that the aliens are merely using them until such a time as their usefulness has been served. However, until that time they will use the human cultists to foment internal planetary sabotage and to infiltrate and disable the major freedom fighter or resistance movements from within. There are 3 major collaboration elements on Earth: the Bavarian Lodges, the CIA NSA Rockefeller agencies, and the Nazi forces within the New Berlin-211 base network beneath the mountains of Neuschwabenland, Antarctica. Agents of the Bavarian Lodges and the German immigrant Rockefellers do work together within the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, NSA, National Security Agency, UNO, United Nations Organization, and New World Order agendas. The establishment of the Antarctic bases may have been the idea of the highest-ranking Nazis rather than the Rockefellers, although the Bavarian Lodges, Illuminati, Thul, Vril, etc. were involved. However, there are many indications suggesting that the Antarctican, Bavarian, and Rockefeller agendas are increasingly merging with each other, suggesting that all 3 are now working together, at least to some extent, and especially at the higher levels. There seems to be a serpent cult at work at the very highest levels of these 3 groupings composed of humanoids and reptiloids operating as part of a marriage of convenience, and that the reptiloids/greys need the political, economic, social, military-industrial connections of the humanoids to gain footholds within human society, and the humanoids need the implant/spacecraft/mind control technology to implement their New World Order. The lower levels of the Bavarian NSA Antarctican factions may seem to be in conflict with each other. However, where this exists, it may all amount to a Hegelian Machiavellian type manipulation imposed by the higher levels of the draconian hierarchy in order to keep the lower levels compartmentalized and therefore more easily controlled. Occasional purges have been carried out to root out those who are not 100% devoted to the cause. In America, there are fifth-column saboteurs within the patriot militia movements who are the supporters of white supremacy Americanism. Whether knowingly or unknowingly, these agents work for something called the Order of the Fourth Reich. Part of their mission is to divert attention from the draconian Orionishtarian and Bavarian NSA Antarctican New World Order agenda and to an overemphasized Zionist threat based on the forged revelations within the Protocols of Zion document, which was in fact created by the Russian secret police for this very diversionary purpose. There are indications that the Bavarian occult lodges, the CIA NSA agencies, and even the Antarctican factions have fed the Patriot network with racist and therefore anti-American ideologies meant to fragment and discredit the militias and make them out to be neo-Nazi fanatics. In this manner, several of the patriotism-based militia groups have been corrupted and have defeated their very purpose, that is to defend a constitutional republic wherein all men are created equal. Branton, 7. Throughout and prior to this, the Open Computer Communications Link will be operational for continued psychological interrogation. 8. At some point in time, again resting upon battle status, the deployment of offensive forces will begin. This deployment should be done in a near instantaneous manner under certain special conditions that can be discussed. 9. The weapon system should be kept powered up throughout. In this manner, the discs will be made to stay airborne. They cannot land in the interval the system is powered. 10. When the weapon is used in one specific power mode, in addition to continuous discharge on the discs that are airborne and the ground-based weapons, the mind confusion and disorientation will build in those personnel at the base and underground. At the end of 4 to 5 weeks or less, all weapons should be totally discharged and power out on the bases. Most personnel, if not all, will be totally incapacitated. The feeding formula will be down and IT's critical processing ruined. All alien embryos should be dead and all hydrogen and oxygen consumables depleted. Note, this is of course speaking in conventional warfare terms, however one must balance this by taking into account the psychic supernatural aspects of this conflict scenario as well. In such an event, the chaplain may be of as much importance as a commanding general himself, especially in regards to reinforcing within ground troops the mental spiritual attitude necessary to counter the fear projected by alien sorcerer and psychic warfare specialists via occult technology. Maintaining a state of absolute confidence and faith in one's ability to establish a victory over the aliens is essential, in that if one's confidence is broken as a result of psychic attack, then it would be very difficult to even make an attempt to follow through to final victory. The battle is already lost. Other possibilities should also be considered in a future assault on this major nexus of alien activity. For instance, if the extent of the base is much deeper and widespread than previously believed, via interconnected caverns and shuttle terminals, then these facts should be brought into the scenario as well. For instance, the aliens might escape through the tubes to other installations. Even if this does occur, this major basing complex can be fully taken by human forces, and then used as a staging area to initiate attacks, in alliance with other humanoid cultures below or above who are also at war with the draconian collectivist reptiloids and greys, against their various strongholds which undoubtedly exist throughout the inner realms. Branton, 11. Based upon data gathered on the miniature prototype weapons, the full-power weapons should have no problem holding off the discs. In many cases some will break within the first 48 hours without being directly hit. 12. At that point, standard weapon technology and logistics can come into play and be used to the extent of destruction desired at the direction of those in charge. 13. The communications can be used throughout to determine status and near the end to attempt to instigate surrender. If no response results, then they should simply be closed in and waited out. Summary. It is important to note that the initial implementation of the computer communications was not instigated for the purpose of talking to the alien for the fun of it, but was deliberately instigated to use as a tool to study, in depth, long-term without physical confrontation, the strengths and weaknesses of the alien. The weapon theory and prototypes were built to capitalize upon and test two key and prominent weaknesses discovered. This in-house funded program has been expensive, in excess of $200,000. Done on behalf of our nation and handled in the best representative manner humanly possible. 1. The prime and weakest area discovered, probed and tested is exactly what they have used, thinking it is their key strength, that being the manipulation of and control of the mind. Not only of command but also humanoid. Manipulated in reverse psychologically and by the language computer, and due to the extreme of mental distortion and incapacity caused by the weapon, it has been found that this facet is for them a disaster and a directly vulnerable integrated weakness. 2. Though their ships are magnificent, they are also weak, solely because of their method and unique mode of flight. They do not have a stable fighting platform. Note, the effectiveness of stable flying conventional jet aircraft armed with advanced beam weaponry has been confirmed by the South African incident, which was investigated by Quest International, a British UFO research organization made up of former police, security and military officials. The incident involved a UFO that was reportedly intercepted using an experimental aircraft-mounted Thor II laser cannon. The weapon was fired and several blinding flashes were seen by the attacking Mirage jet pilot, and the disc crashed at high speed into the desert sands of the Kalahari. The craft was brought to a South African base, and using hydraulic equipment the door was opened and two blue-gray aliens with reptilian features staggered out and were apprehended. When one doctor attempted to take a blood sample from one of the creatures, the being attacked him and its claw-like hands left deep scratches on his face and chest. The aliens proved to be rather vicious and seemed to operate on an individual collective intelligence mode. Subsequent research suggested a possible genetic connection similar to that of the early bipedal saurian species on Earth according to one leaked document, and that the aliens were highly adaptable or mutational. In the event of jet-mounted beam weapons, however, the problem would be our ability to determine whether these craft are friends or foes. The Quest International officials have revealed sufficient evidence to prove that either the event did happen or that the international intelligence community had collaborated in a massive and expensive UFO hoax. Either way, the implications are provocative. Branton. Charge distribution can also be discharged. The weapon does this, even in its present miniature prototype state. It is not the purpose of this report to imply that the overall problem will be solved with the capture of these bases. Obviously it will not, but it is a firmly based beginning with a high degree of rated projected success ratio. It is not intended to imply the alien will not fight. They may, though their inclination is generally the opposite. This basing area is key. Without it, their mission is in very deep trouble. It is noted that these are not the only bases on Earth. There are others. With the conservative estimate using typical logistic support numbers, it is not unrealistic to say there are 50,000 aliens, at the very least, Branton, within the ecosphere of Earth and near space. Note, even if this basing nexus is captured by the United States Constitutional Forces and a large percentage of the underground joint operational agenda is forced from the underground networks of the USA, it is very likely that they would not retreat to other planets, but would instead retreat to their more ancient underground strongholds in other parts of the world. This would not necessarily end the activities of the Serpent Cult, the humanoid-reptiloid collaboration on Earth, but it would provide a base from which future atrocities of the Serpent Cult may be battled on, below, and beyond planet Earth. Such an action would no doubt provoke a negative response from other human power centers on planet Earth that are also being manipulated by and or have been infiltrated by the aliens, for instance the Bavarian cults and their New World Order forces. The Draconians might, as suggested in the 12th chapter of the Book of Revelation, attempt a military attack against the USA in order to prevent the takeover of their underground fortresses here, or an attack after the fact in retaliation for such a takeover. The important thing to remember, however, is that freedom never comes without a price. However, the price for maintaining our freedom is nothing compared to the price we will have to pay for losing it. Remember, no matter what trials America must pass through in the future in her efforts to maintain freedom, liberty and individuality from the forces of collectivist tyranny, we must never forget that the outcome of this war will have a tremendous impact not only on the future of this planet but also on the future of all of the colonial worlds within this galaxy. WHO are intently looking towards planet Earth and especially America, which is the epicenter or staging ground for the latest battle between the Human Federation and the Reptiloid Empire, to see just which way the battle will turn. According to several contactees, many Federation forces and personnel from the Andromeda and Pleiades constellations, and also from Tau Ceti, Procyon and other star systems, are so absolutely devoted to their belief in non-interventionism that they have blockaded our Sol system from draconian Arianite interventionists who would take advantage of this critical and unstable time in Earth's history, the close of the 20th century, to claim yet another treasure planet, perhaps the most strategic planet of all, for their empire. This would have a devastating impact on all of the Federation worlds, since this planet and all its chemical, mineral, plant, animal, liquid, genetic, etc. resources could be used as a staging world for draconian attack against other Federation worlds. As this is being written, Federation personnel are fighting and dying near the outskirts of our Sol system, according to contactee Alex Collier and others, in order to prevent this from happening and to prevent continued intervention in the affairs of planet Earth by the various galactic vermin, scum, parasites, and filth that have poisoned and destroyed countless human colonial worlds throughout this galaxy and possibly others. No matter what trials we as Americans must pass through in the future in order to defend our nation and our planet from the Draconians and their ungodly human New World Order collaborators, never forget that we are not only fighting for our families, our communities, our states, and our nation. We are also fighting for our planet, our star system, and for our galaxy. Branton, some of us will be lost in the endeavor, that is obvious. However, now the advantage is gained along with new additional technology to prepare for the next stage. The key to overall success is, they totally respect force. And with them, the most effective method is to stubbornly continue to pick and pull at their defense with no let-up. Faced with the total loss of a base that has taken years to construct, it is believed that their mission will be grossly weakened and badly slowed. As Americans, in this particular instance, we must realize that we in this case cannot rely upon our inherent moral principles to provide the answer. Negotiation is out. This particular group can only be dealt with no differently than one must deal with a mad dog. That method they understand. Note, this has led some to suggest that the only way to deal with the Greys is through direct force and threat of death. That is, to demand unconditional surrender of their forces to ours and threaten their destruction if they do not comply. It is possible, according to some contactees, that certain of the reptilian life forms can be tamed, that is if they are somehow disconnected from the alien collective hive mind. This would be especially true with the genetic hybrids, and especially those hybrids who possess a human soul matrix. Even if they surrender, those aliens that are truly non-human, that is, no soul, can never be allowed to work and operate on an equal basis with other humans, but must ever remain subservient, and I would personally suggest prevented from reproducing after their kind, since they do not possess the integral conscience necessary, of their own initiative, to overcome their base animal or predatory instincts or drives. For those who may disagree, just look at the known history of the reptiloids/Greys and their dealings with human beings. One should not be misled by the apparent superiority of intelligence of the Greys, since their intelligence is a direct result of the collective mind. Without the collective hive and operating on their own, they are mentally inferior to human beings, at least on an individual basis. The Greys have told some individuals that they are legally here on Earth and in America because of the treaties. Did they legally implant numerous influential men and women with mind control devices against their conscious will? Did they legally and permanently abduct untold thousands of men, women and children to their underground bases? Are they legally mutilating and stealing our livestock? Did an elected Congress legally agree to these treaties, or was it an executive branch of government which has appointed numerous unelected personnel and agencies, in many cases hirelings of unelected corporate military agendas, who in turn have established treaties with an alien force or forces? Just how legal is the United States presidency anyway? Following the death of John F. Kennedy, if Lyndon Johnson was an accomplice in a fascist coup d'etat of the executive branch of the United States government in 1963? Were any of the corporate CFRTLC presidential hirelings who came into office following this executive coup d'etat legal? Were their executive orders, for instance those connected with FEMA, which authorized the destruction of the United States Constitution in the event of a national emergency, legal? Or could it be that such executive orders are not worth the toilet paper they are written on? The fact is that the Greys, with the help of their mind-controlled human zombie collaborators, have invaded our country, our airspace, and have undermined our lands, and they are freely violating the personal and mental integrity of our people against their conscious consent. Branton. Therefore, In eliminating this threat, we most certainly cannot be called the aggressor, because we have literally been invaded. In final conclusion, A. They cannot under any circumstances be trusted. B. They are totally deceptive and death-oriented and have no moral respect for a human or human life. C. No negotiation, agreement nor peaceful compromise can be settled upon in any way. D. No agreement signed by both parties will ever be adhered to nor recognized and respected by the alien, though they might attempt to make us believe otherwise. E. Absolutely no quarter can be allowed under any circumstances. Once the offense is instigated, it cannot be abandoned. If it is, reciprocal reprisal will immediately result. They must be made to come down, destruct themselves, which is a standing order if the ship is failing, or leave Earth immediately. No leeway of any kind can be allowed or tolerated. For those of you who would question the need to take the offensive against the reptiloid/gray strongholds at Dulce and elsewhere, let me just remind you of the kind of alien mentality we are dealing with here by relating the following 3 incidents, according to well-known ufologist Brad Steiger, in the book The Rainbow Conspiracy, co-authored with his wife Sherry Steiger. A terrifying incident occurred in 1955. This was one of several reports of UFO attacks against civilians, civilian airlines and military planes and jets that were documented in the book. In many cases, many notorious airline crashes were accompanied by UFO activity reported by witnesses just prior to the disasters or disappearances. Usually there are few actual witnesses to aircraft-related disasters or disappearances. However, in this particular case there was. A civilian pilot and his friend were engaged in some prospecting projects near the headwaters of the Agua River near the city of Prescott, Arizona. The 2 men swore that they had observed 2 brightly lit UFOs attack a military plane as it directed some kind of strange beams at the aircraft, causing it to explode. Worse yet, according to the civilian pilot and his friend, when both of the airmen ejected from the doomed and burning aircraft and began floating down to the ground in their parachutes, the UFOs swung back around and seared the survivors with the same deadly rays, apparently killing them both. In an article titled, Incredible UFO Incinerations, Close Encounters of the Combustible Kind, researcher Larry E. Arnold describes the following terrifying encounters. Of the many episodes involving UFOs and the spontaneous combustion of humans, quite probably the most disastrous event, if true, in modern times occurred to the African village of Karamukuya on Mount Kenya. For several nights in June 1954, young Lele Thindu and his shepherd companions listened to the pounding of their neighbors' drums announcing a wedding about to take place on the mountainside. They also watched strange lights soar around this sacred peak in central Kenya. They naturally were startled when bright beams flashed from these soaring lights, then concerned that the drums were now silent. The next morning Lele learned that all the dancers, all the children, all the livestock, the entire population of the village, had been seared to death by terrible streams of light from glowing objects, report Brad Steiger and Joan Reitner in their book, Flying Saucers Are Hostile. It was not until Lele Thindu ventured into Nairobi that he was able to tell his story to someone who recognized the tale for what it really was, the annihilation of an African village by a UFO. In the spring 1991 issue of UFO Journal of Facts, Forrest Crawford, a researcher for the well-known Muffin Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, related his personal encounters and conversations with a man he identified only as Oscar, who was involved in UFO crash/retrieval projects in earlier years. Oscar stated that on one occasion he and his team received an assignment to investigate a disk that had crashed near Phoenix, Arizona and was then transported to an underground base in North Dakota. The team descended into the deeper levels of the Contrapac submarine base in San Diego, where high-security OS personnel directed them to a tube-like shuttle. Entering the shuttle they prepared to shoot the tubes, and eventually emerged into the lower levels of the North Dakota base. Once they arrived, they were told that they would not be allowed to visit the surface of the base during their stay. Oscar viewed the disk which had originally held a crew of 3 human-like pilots. 2 were found outside the craft dead from radiation exposure and other injuries, whereas another was found in an injured state within the secured conditions inside the craft after the team had succeeded in opening it using a sonic resonator. The operation was initially carried out under the direction of Commander Charles Turner, a friendly man who Oscar got along with well. However, without warning, another high-ranking officer, who everyone feared and who did not appear friendly at all, came on the scene. He stated that he was now in charge and began ordering all kinds of experiments and exploratory surgeries on the humanoid, who was still alive, in spite of the fact that the anesthesia had little or no effect on him. Some samples of his organs were also removed for study. The new man in charge was Frank Drake, who later became involved with the Ozma and SETI radio dish experiments, which had initially pointed their dishes at Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani and began receiving intense signals suggesting intelligent life. These initial reports were a mistake or irrelevant according to Frank Drake and his colleagues, and nothing remarkable resulted publicly from the SETI project. Officially, that is. However, this and similar projects continue to receive a great deal of funding supplied by the loyal American taxpayer. Drake named the Disk Recovery Research Project Ozma with an S, and continued to torment the humanoid with various surgical procedures until he finally died. Oscar had given the humanoid the nickname Hank, which was an Amerindian word meaning troubled spirit. According to Forrest Crawford, before the humanoid died, Oscar had learned several interesting things from other researchers on his team as well as from the humanoid himself, who had projected images and messages to Oscar via some form of telepathic empathic visual encephalographic wave transfer. The man was approximately 5'8" tall, of human-like Mesoamerican or Mediterranean appearance yet with a face and nose that was slightly broader than the average Earth person, muscular yet not fat. However, he was somewhat heavier for his size than Earth people, suggesting that his planet of origin possessed gravity somewhat greater than Earth's. Crawford stated, "The pattern from the panel inside the ship was confirmed by RAP to match stars of the constellation Eridanus as seen from Earth. It was later confirmed by Hank that the stars of origin of his people were Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani." In later sessions, Oscar discussed some reasons for the presence of the aliens. He said they do not like the situation with some of the small gray aliens. Hank also stated that the particular group of aliens that his people most often encountered were the gray whites, which are apparently a genetically engineered reptiloid insectoid hybrid race. Branton. The Tau sessions feel that the abductions being carried out by some of the Greys are a great injustice to humanity. They are a parasitic race that has and is preying on human civilizations throughout the universe, Oscar relayed. He added that our government's involvement with the Greys is very dangerous and out of control. Oscar is adamant that they are using human fluids for sustenance. They feed by immersing their arms in vats and rubbing the fluids on their bodies. He claims that they are also kidnapping children. The Tau sessions have been preyed upon by these aliens before and they are working with other races and communities that were also victims. One such race that Oscar claims was run off their home planet by the Buck people. Hank's definition of these aliens, because of their partly insectoid nature and parasitical character, was what we now call the Nordics or Pleiadians. He claims, because of his ongoing contacts, he was made aware of the Billy Meyer case in Switzerland and swears that is a real contact. Note, others claim that the Meyer contacts and photos are faked, however they may not have been aware of the fact that some of the very first skeptical investigators who came to Meyer attempted to see if they could reproduce the photos by making their own models and taking pictures of them. Several of these models and the photos were given to Meyer. The exact motive for doing so is not known. However, later investigators saw these models in Meyer's home and took some of the faked photos that the initial investigators had left with Meyer, found the hidden strings through photo analysis, and came to the logical conclusion. Was Meyer set up or was it just one big misunderstanding? Other evidence tends to confirm Meyer's claims, including other eyewitnesses to unusual UFO activity, photos of UFOs passing behind trees, motion picture footage, and so on. Branton, I find all these comments interesting, especially when you consider one investigative detail of this case. I have seen Oscar's house, his mother's house, his workshop and truck, and at no time were any books, magazines, transcripts or movies about any subject, let alone recent UFO material, found. Could he be an avid reader of the latest and most controversial UFO documents and just be hiding them when we come over? This is highly unlikely since, without a phone, our visits were always unannounced. Oscar, who has since had subsequent contacts with Tau sessions, wants people to know that if they are contacted by the Tau sessions, humans such as he described, to not be afraid because they are here to help. Chapter 13. Dulce, New Mexico, and the Draconian Connection. The following is taken from an article by Tal Levesque, titled The Covert Return of an Alien Species of Reptilian Heritage, the Dulce Base, which appeared in a mailer newsletter distributed by researcher Patrick O'Connell, according to Tal, ages ago. A conflict with other beings, elves, human giants, destroyed most of the reptoid civilization, which forced some into deep caverns and others to leave Earth, to Alpha Draconis and Altair in the constellation Aquila, which in ancient lore was associated with evil reptilian creatures. The conflict is a species war between the Adamic seed and the serpent, draconian seed. Note: contactee Maurice Dariel claims to have learned from people he had encountered who came from the subterranean Agari colonies below North America and Asia, that these giants were closely allied with a race of pre-Scandinavian Nordics who maintained a powerful and scientifically developed civilization whose remains now lie beneath tons of sand in the ancient Gobi Desert region of Asia. Dariel was told how both the giants and Pelon people had waged a prehistoric war against a race of Antarctic-based reptiloids, which they succeeded in driving from the surface of the planet during the ancient conflict. Branton, under cover of darkness, with bases hidden inside the earth, this nocturnal invader has chosen to reclaim what was once theirs and use it, and us, as a staging area in their ancient conflict with the Elves. Note, that is, to reclaim that which these serpent races want the United States to believe was once theirs. The Elves are the so-named Elder race, a human branch tied in with the Adamic heritage yet who had attained to or had retained a very tall physical stature averaging from 9-12 feet in height. Others have referred to them as the Anakim or the Nephili. Branton, humans with alien brain implants, the zombies, have been programmed to help overthrow mankind in the near future. The reptoids are even able to transform themselves into beings with human characteristics and features. The planet Earth is being stressed so that human resistance will be minimal during the overt takeover and control of mankind. It started as a joint interaction program. An alien species wanted to share parts of its advanced technology with certain humans in key positions of power within government, military, corporations, secret societies, etc. The population as a whole began to be manipulated into the alien agenda. They wanted total control of us. Former Dulce base security officer Thomas Costello had seen tall reptilian humanoids at the base. This is interesting to me, Tal, because in 1979 I came face to face with the over 6-foot-tall other species reptoids which materialized in our home. They took blood from my wife, who is an Rh-negative blood type, and her daughter, who was 1,500 miles away. We all came to know that the visitors were here to stay. We also learned how the reptilian race was returning to Earth and the Greys, who were mercenaries, were being used to interface with and manipulate humans. Their demonic agenda was to keep Earth's surface men confused and unaware of their true nature and potential. Also the knowledge of vast and varied civilizations living within the Earth. The fantastic truth was made to seem a fantasy, a legend, a myth, and illusion. The reptoids are returning to Earth to use it as a staging area, in their ancient conflict with the Elohim, the angelus forces of the Almighty Creator, as well as the Nephili, who were not angels as some believe but actual humans of tall stature who in ancient times were undeservingly worshipped as gods. Branton, the Adamic race has underground bases within Mars. They are a warrior cult culture. There is a vast network of tube shuttle connections, under the United States, which extends into a global system of tunnels and subcities. Note: the reptilians do not consider themselves aliens. They claim Terra, third from the Sun, was their home before we humans arrived. As a species, Tal continues, the reptilian heritage beings, the Greys, reptoids, winged Draco with two horns, the classic stereotype of the devil, are highly analytical and technologically oriented. They are seriously into the sciences of automation, computers, bioengineering, genetics. However, their exploits in these areas has led to reckless experimentation, with total disregard for ethics, moral standards, and empathy. This is also true of many of the human beings working with them. Note, in reference to the winged Draco, which are considered to be near the top of the alien hierarchy, above the tall lizard men and the short Greys, these have also gone by the following titles: the Mothman, Gargoyles, Winged Serpents, Pterodactoids, Chiakars or Birdmen. They seem to be exclusively deep subterranean dwellers yet have been known to appear during massive UFO, Men in Black, abduction waves such as that which passed through the Point Pleasant area of West Virginia as recorded in John Keel's book The Mothman Prophecies, which suggested a possible subterranean connection near an old TNT storage area in the vicinity. The two other areas where these winged reptilians have been most often reported are of course below Dulce, New Mexico, and also within the 8-leveled underground system beneath Camp Hero near Montauk Point, Long Island, where a joint Nazi, American corporate and European militant Nazis, Grey, and Reptiloid base exists. One that reportedly connects to the ITT Center in New Jersey. The common denominator would be the German Krupp family who built munitions plants for Adolf Hitler and not only maintains a large percentage of control over ITT, but also helped to finance the Montauk time-space mind control projects for the Bavarian Thal Society, which are continuing within the MALTA or Montauk Alsace-Lorraine Time Archives facility within the Alsace-Lorraine MTS, near the French-German border. The Alsace-Lorraine regions were taken from France in the Franco-Prussian War of the previous century and later returned to France by the Allies following the end of WWII. The Malta base may lie under the German territory near the border. However, if it happens to lie under French soil, this may be because the base is located in one of the underground facilities constructed by the Nazis during, before or just following WWII, a facility that the French did not discover following the return of the region following the war. As for the ITT Center in New Jersey, it also reportedly has a connection to the National-International Sub-Global Network, according to Al Billick. Very rarely are the winged Draco encountered on UFOs, and although at times they have been seen flying at night or in the day through the airs in the Point Pleasant manifestations, they seem to operate most often within the deepest underground levels where the greys and reptiloids themselves have been known to converge. Branton. Tull then describes something which might seem unbelievable if it were not for the fact that dozens of other sources tend to confirm the same thing. This discovery was reportedly one of the real reasons for the initiation of the Dulce Wars. Level number 7 is the worst. Row after row of 1,000s of humans and human mixture remains in cold storage. Here too are embryos of humanoids in various stages of development. Also, many human children remains in storage vats. Who were these people? Note, during a lecture given to the Prophecy Club, Japanese researcher of the Area 51 and Dulce Enigmas, Norio Hayakawa, quoted the following statement that appeared in a 1992 issue of the Albuquerque Journal. Why New Mexico has so many more missing children than comparable states remains a mystery. Branton. The sources for these incredibly disturbing allegations aside from Thomas Costello himself, according to Tull, included people who worked in the labs, abductees taken to the base, people who assisted in the construction, intelligence personnel, NSA, CIA, etc., and UFO inner-Earth researchers. This information, Tull states, is meant for those who are seriously interested in the Dulce base. For your own protection, be advised to use caution while investigating this complex. Chapter 14. Raging Battles Beneath the Earth, the Dulce Wars. The following is an excerpt from an article which appeared in a UFO-related publication. We do not know exactly who the author of the article is or what publication it appeared in, as our source sent us only some Xeroxes with no references. We relate the information as received. Lear directed my attention to a large map of Nevada, which delineates all the areas which civilian maps coyly leave as uncharted military reserves. Right in the very center is a place called Area 51. It is our most secret complex. There are 1,900 people there. It takes presidential clearance to work there, and they are ferried in by aircraft in the morning and taken out about 5 o'clock in the evening. They have nothing to do with the saucers. The people who work on the saucers go up later in the afternoon, and go home about midnight. The saucer facility is called S4. S4 is in the southwest corner of Area 51. Unfortunately, this facility, and a similar setup near Dulce, New Mexico, may now belong to forces not loyal to the United States government, or even the human race. It's horrifying for us to think that all the scientists we think are working for us are actually controlled by the aliens. A deal was made with them in the latter part of the 1960s, probably a revisioning of the 1954 treaty, which was in turn an outgrowth of the secret Bavarian Illuminati treaty with the Greys in 1933. Branton. In exchange for technology, we would cover up the existence of the aliens. Apparently this agreement, engineered by an arm of government so covert that even the president may not be on the need-to-know list, also sanctioned the abduction of humans, which the aliens rationalized as an ongoing monitoring of a developing civilization. We asked only for a list of the abductees. In 1973, the deal soured. Hundreds of people, thousands, were being abducted that weren't on the list. In 1978-79, there was an altercation between us and the aliens, in which they killed 44 of our top scientists, and a number of Delta Force who were trying to free them. I'm not sure where this altercation occurred. It could have been Dulce, or it could have occurred in Groom Lake. Note, according to Robert Lazar, An underground facility below Groom Lake was the site of an intense firefight between Greys and the United States military personnel after a human security officer had challenged an alien dictator not to enter a certain alien-controlled area with a loaded weapon, and was subsequently killed as a result of his challenge. This war was actually a massacre, according to MJ-12 Special Studies Group MJ-12 SSG agent Michael Wolff, since the first outbreak of violence in 1975 resulted during a demonstration of an antimatter reactor within an underground chamber. The Greys operating the demonstration ordered the human security officers to remove the bullets from their weapons. One security officer questioned this order, and just for having the audacity to question, one of the Greys apparently let their true colors show. That is, it prematurely exposed the fact that they were not really the allies of the American government, but actually an occupational invasion force that had to maintain absolute discipline among its conquered subjects. This thing from out of this world decided that it would make an example out of those who questioned their orders, and its comrades followed suit. The Greys commenced to slaughter several dozen security personnel and scientists, although only one alien Grey died in that initial altercation. Thomas Costello claims that another battle occurred below Dulce 4 years later in 1979, after several scientists who had discovered the horrible truth of thousands of human abductees in cold storage or imprisoned in cage-like enclosures in the deeper alien sectors under Dulce, were themselves captured by the aliens following this discovery. These were some of the best minds America had to offer. As we will see later on, the Dulce Wars were somewhat more complex than this brief explanation might suggest, however. Branton.